Great, and good evening. Getting this microphone. Say good evening. This is the very good feedback. A regular meeting of the Morro Bay City Council, Tuesday, September 24th, 2019. We are at the very warm Veterans Memorial Hall. It's 5:30 p.m. at 209 Surf Street, Morro Bay, California. We do have a quorum of City Council members. I will call the meeting to order and ask that in your own way you just observe a moment of silence for any issues of importance to you and this community and our country. Thank you very much, and I've asked our esteemed city attorney to lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you. See, we will, Mr. City Attorney, do we have any closed session reports this evening, sir?
No reportable action, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. With that, I will move to council member reports, announcements, presentations. Who'd like to start us off?
Nothing.
Okay. Marlis?
I do have something.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. First, let me say that I had the honor this past week of drawing the winner of the Lions Club car giveaway. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, this is a program that the Lions Club sponsors along with Todd's Garage and the Community Resource Connections Office. And Bill Todd of Todd's Garage repurposes the car, fixes them up, and then they're given away to a worthy community member. And the Community Resource Connections Office actually screens all of the people who might need the car. And this is the 24th car that they're giving away, and to a very lucky Morro Bay resident. So if you have a car and you don't need it anymore, donate it to the Lions Club. It's a 5013C, and they will issue you your appropriate tax form. And then Councilmember Heller and I are going to be hosting a town meeting on the short-term vacation rental issue, and that will be Wednesday, October 9th, 5:30 p.m. at the Community Center. So if you are at all interested in that issue, please join us. We'd love to hear from you.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Davis, sir.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to talk about the Lions, too, in a little bit different aspect. The Morro Bay Lions have recently started a recycle project. Raleigh, Bigby, and Chuck Stoll are making daily pickups of recycling materials at several businesses around town. Larry Rosen is coordinating recycle efforts at the Senior Center. The Lions sort the materials. They take them to a center in Cambria, and they make about $500 a month that goes into their Lions Foundation account to fund the following projects. And this is an incredible list of services that the Morro Bay Lions provide. Eye screening in Del Mar, Monarch, and Baywood elementary schools. Eye exams and glasses for needy students and adults. Food for hungry folks at the community dinners. Free food through the food bank partnership to the 7 groups who provide and prepare the meals every Monday night here at the Veterans Building. Funding educational opportunities for Del Mar Elementary and scholarships for Morro Bay High School students. Car donations. Support for the city by providing turkeys and assisting with the annual Thanksgiving dinner. Coordinating volunteers for the Amgen Tour of California. Providing the Lions hot dog cart. for Skeleton Saturday at the Natural History Museum, the Maritime Museum, Morro Bay Open Space Alliance, and food and flags for the city's annual July 4th celebration. They assist with and print programs for the annual Cayucas Lost at Sea Memorial Ceremony. And they give donations to other nonprofits and charities, including the Community Resource Connection, Morro Bay in Bloom, Boy Scouts, Maritime Museum, California Lions Foundation, the City of Hope, and Lions Club International Foundation. The Lions also collect used eyeglasses at the Senior Center, at Mike's Barber Shop, and at the Chamber of Commerce here and in Los Osos. The glasses go to a prison in Avenal where they're cleaned, calibrated, and packaged for delivery to third world countries by the Lions. All of this is done by a local group of 25 members of the Morro Bay Lions Club. And I want to point out how much good this small group of dedicated people do for the community. They have started the recycle service, but they're at a stopping point now. They cannot add any more pickups because of the small number of people involved. So if anyone in our audience here or in television audience is looking for a productive way to do good things for the communities, please contact Ray McKelvey of the Lions. A second item, the 6th annual Morro Bay Trick or Treat program, October 31st, starts at 3 o'clock at the Gathering Place, Grandma's Yogurt at the corner of Morro Bay and Main Street. There will be a police haunted house from 3 to 7 p.m. The Whitecaps band is going to play. There'll be a haunted trolley car, once again, photo booth, popcorn candy, face painting, and games. And special thanks from John Elliott, who organized this, to the City of Morro Bay Recreation Services, the Chamber of Commerce, and all of the businesses who will be participating for Trick or Treat. There'll be a map for the kiddies to follow to pick up whatever they pick up. And last, the Morro Bay Police Department invites all of us to National Coffee with a Cop, Wednesday, October 2nd, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. at Top Dog Coffee Bar. So Chief Cox will be supplying coffee and pastries to all who attend. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sounds like a meeting that you can't miss, that kind of stuff. Councilmember Addis, I was just getting digressing there. Thank you.
Well, happy voter registration day to everyone. I hope that, I assume everybody in the audience is registered to vote and has voted for somebody sitting up here. But I really encourage you, before you go to bed tonight, that you talk to a friend or family member and see if they're registered to vote. Students can register, pre-register at 16 years old and will be automatically registered when they're 18. So that's that. And then it's wonderful to see that we have Monterey Bay Community Power tonight. It is Climate Action Week, and Climate Action Week will end on Friday with a rally and a march at the County Courthouse in San Luis Obispo, starting at 5 o'clock. The Bike Valet just committed to being there, so we encourage people to ride their bikes, to listen to the speakers, and then to march through downtown. And then October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and the Peace Officer Association is selling these patches for $10, and money will be going to local cancer organizations. And I believe the chief might bring some patches to our next council meeting, so you can come back in October to buy a patch or contact any officer or go by PD to get that. And then there were some interesting announcements in national politics today. And on October 10th, our congressman will be here, Congressman Carbajal, who's our House representative, for a town hall at the Community Center in Morro Bay. So that's October 10th. from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And it's a free event, but there were only about 70 tickets left last we checked. So we encourage you to reserve your seat. You can find information on my social media, Dawn Addis City Council, or on Women's March SLOW social media and website. And that's it.
Great. Thank you for those announcements. One, besides two others that I'll have a little later, is a report on the Air Pollution Control District. I serve on that board for the city. You wonder, what air pollution issues do we have in this county? Well, the Napomo Mesa is one of the most unhealthy airspaces in the United States, having over 70 days last year exceeding the national standards for particulate matter. You've seen the controversy, I think, with regard to Oceano Dunes, off-road riding, and a number of issues. There was going to be a community forum held in Napomo on October the 2nd. That has been canceled. State Parks is vacillating on their commitment to move forward with corrective actions. And if you're interested in that and following that, even though you might be further north, that does impact us all from a public health standpoint, and also impacts the county as well in terms of its viability and perceptiveness with those that visit us from a national perspective. And so wanted to report on that and then turn it over to our city manager. Any report from you, sir? He had none.
Just want to check. Thanks, City Manager Scott Collins. And just a couple of things I wanted to advise the community and council on. The first is we did receive, community input over the summer about concerns about the condition of the trash service on the weekends and the restrooms on the waterfront area. We do have mini trash cans that are serviced by Morro Bay Garbage, and then the restrooms that are public restrooms that are serviced by the city. We are looking at a couple options to bring back to City Council for consideration about how to enhance those services. As we know, it's very important to our community members and our visitors. Also wanted to advise the community and council that there will be a discussion on housing here on Tuesday, October 8th at 3:30 p.m. This will be it'll be a special city council meeting. We do have staff from the county, the California League of Cities, and of course our city staff, community development director Scott Graham, to give a pretty comprehensive update on the housing from the state level down to regional level to the local level. So we hope people come out and attend and learn with us.
Scott, what time was that?
3:30 p.m. Tuesday, October 8th, here at the Vets Hall.
Great, thank you. With that, it is, if you don't know, it is Sea Otter Awareness Week, September 22nd through the 28th, and we have a special presentation. If council will meet me down at the podium, I'm happy to ask Janet Lang Young to come forward, and we'd like to offer this proclamation to you and for all the work that your folks do. Thank you. This is, let me get that mic print here. This is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay declaring September 22nd through September 28th, 2019 as the 17th Sea Otter Awareness Week. City Council, City of Morro Bay, California, and the proclamation reads, whereas the sea otter is a symbol of wildness, an integral part of California's natural ecosystem, and serves as an indicator for the overall health of California's nearshore marine environment, and whereas disease from a variety of sources accounts for a significant amount of the mortality of California sea otters in a given year, and whereas awareness of the benefits of maintaining the health of the nearshore marine environment has raised public awareness in the sea otter, and whereas increased human viewing and other interactions with sea otters can have a detrimental effect on sea otter health, and whereas through California State Parks Sea Otter Experience and Sea Life Stewards programs in Morro Bay, volunteer docents, such as yourself, provided information and learning opportunities for over 6,500 visitors during the months of July and August, 2-month period. 6,000, you can clap for that, 500 visitors. Whereas the City of Morro Bay is extremely grateful for these volunteers who give their time so freely in order to increase public awareness and understanding of sea otter importance and issues. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Morro Bay declares and does proclaim September 22nd through the 28th, 2019, to be the 17th Sea Otter Awareness Week. And I'm happy to have my signature on that. Welcome. Let you make some comments if you'd like.
I came to talk very briefly about Sea Otter Experience. We're a state park program, and all of us are state park docents. And we teach people about the California sea otters during the summer, as he said, every weekend during July and August. We have a specimen, a pelt, a skull, some food items, and scopes and binoculars. And as he mentioned, we saw over 6,500 visitors this summer in 2 months. So that's what we do, and we enjoy it. If anybody wants to do that with us, let us know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tell everybody thank you for
Thank you very much.
you bet. And we are fortunate also this evening to have a presentation from Morro Bay Community Power. Mark Adato is here to speak this evening. And by way of introduction, you may recall that the City of Morro Bay, alongside the City of San Luis Obispo, joined the Monterey Community Bay Power Joint Powers Authority last year. MBCP is a community choice energy agency established by local communities to source carbon-free electricity for local communities while retaining PG&E's traditional role of delivering power and maintaining electrical infrastructure. MBCP has been up and running for over a year now with nearly $40 million in reserves. That is commendable, and has proven in Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito counties to save ratepayers up to 5% on their electricity bills while also providing cleaner energy and funding for local renewable energy projects. Residents and businesses in Morro Bay will be able to join the MBCP beginning in January of 2020, and I'm sure Mark will speak more about that. Several other communities in SLO County are joining MBCP as well. We have Mark Adato here from MBCP, and he is here to discuss the next steps in the process and answer any questions that council members may have regarding this important initiative that we so graciously have become a part of. Mark, welcome. Good to have you this evening.
Thank you so much for that welcome. Mark Adato, I'm a public engagement associate for Monterey Bay Community Power, and I like that intro, the Morro Bay Community Power. That was a nice intro. Let's see, I wanted to bring...
I did that for you, by the way.
Yes, I know. I thought that was great. In your packets, just to let you know, as an update, there is our community outreach plan, so that is in your packet, as well as the PowerPoint, as well as an updated financial projection with additional savings for the city at large, and then also for the city as a municipal customer. So with that, you got it going? Okay. All right. Let's see. So for those people that are probably familiar at this point, community choice energy is really about local choice, clean energy, and economic vitality. And so this model, this hybrid model in which we're working with the investor-owned utilities, is become very successful. There's about 20 agencies moving forward with this model. San Diego, as one of the largest cities in California in terms of energy load, looks to be close to formulation. And so essentially, for those in the audience, this is a hybrid model. So what it does is it allows local jurisdictions, cities and counties, to basically aggregate their energy load and do procurement on behalf of customers in their jurisdiction. So that's what the CCAs do, and that's what Monterey has been doing successfully for our Tri-County area, Santa Cruz, San Benito, and Monterey counties since March of 2018. The investor-owned utility, PG&E in this case, is still providing transmission and distribution. They're doing customer service billing, reading the meters, and of course maintaining the infrastructure, which is, as we know with the public safety power shutoff issues, very critical. So it's the same service. We share a customer bill. We can go to the next slide. And as we have grown, we are very excited that we, after having waited a year, can finally move to enrollment for the city of Morro Bay and for the city of San Luis Obispo. So I'm very pleased to be here after this long wait. Currently 21 jurisdictions, counting our new 2 jurisdictions down in San Luis Obispo County. And then if we go to the next slide, this is really for the benefit of folks in the audience here. This is just a little bit of a touch on how we're governed. We did some unique things. We're the first tri-county CCA to form at one time. That was quite a bit of work. But we've been governing ourselves with 2 different boards. The operations board, comprised of CAOs and city managers, really provides that day-to-day expertise to help our procurement team and our CEO, Tom Habashi, with managing contracts and energy procurement. And then our policy board is comprised of our electeds. And so with that, they are focused on our strategic goals, working with the CEO, and managing our Unified Central Coast strategic initiative here. So with that, I will just make quick mention that the way we've structured our boards is that all cities with a population of over 50,000 are seated fully, as well as all the counties. And then the smaller cities are in a shared seat where they rotate their responsibilities twice, every 2 years. And so currently, San Luis Obispo is serving in that capacity for your city, Morro Bay. Let's see, next slide. So power supply, it's all about power supply. And what we've been able to do is very strategic. From the initiation, we're of course meeting California's renewable portfolio standard of 33%, as is PG&E and all the other investor-owned utilities. And that's wind and solar power, biomass, geothermal, small hydro under 30 megawatts, primarily out of California. And then the rest of our power content for our basic service, MB choice, is essentially 66% from large hydroelectric power, and that's primarily from the Pacific Northwest. So what this has allowed us to do is procure clean energy completely, no fossil fuels, no nuclear power, and with this, build a very strong financial base, pay off all of our debt, build up strong reserves so that we can deal with a very dynamic legislative and regulatory environment, as well as a dynamic energy market as well. So with that, we've also had some incredible success with developing our own energy. So there's procuring from the wholesale market and from the grid. That's job number 1. And that allows us to reap some rewards in terms of net revenues. Those are the profits that normally would have gone out to pay shareholders at the investor-owned utilities. That's what stays local, and that's what everybody is excited about. What can we do with that? What can we do with that in terms of customer savings? What can we do with that in terms of local programs? And what can we do in terms of building the additional renewable energy that we're looking at for both our portfolio as well as our local jurisdictions? So with that, we partnered with Silicon Valley, and we did 3 projects. One was 128 megawatts of solar. This was in Kern County. It included 40 megawatts of storage. And as we know, storage is the next thing to be incentivizing. And so with our intent to go out and build this renewable energy with the storage, it's being developed on our behalf. That's in Kearns County. Those are two power purchase agreements, and those will be coming online in 2021. With that, another 150 megawatts plus 45 megawatts of storage, and that is in Kings County. So while they're not in our jurisdiction, they are close at hand, and they are allowing us to put about 20% of our power demand into power purchase agreements on our behalf. Another project that we're working on is 200 megawatts of wind, and that's out of the state of New Mexico. And this Duran Mesa project is a conduit into California, and what is strategic about that is that as it is sunsetting and the wind is dying down in California, it's still performing and generating power in New Mexico, so that helps with our power supply. Next slide, please. So with this, quick touch on our budget philosophy. What we've been doing is taking 2% of our gross revenues right off the top and devoting those to programs. That was about $4.5 million last year, and to be increasing. And then we've been taking 30% of the surplus and putting into rebates for customers. We had a very simple model in the beginning. It was match the investor-owned utilities rates and time of use schedules across the board, all 40 categories or more, and then offer a rebate. First 3%, this year 5%, next year 7%, 8% the year after. With that, we've been building strong reserves, as mentioned in the opening. And really what the goal is now, and I believe as of the end of July, the reserve fund is about $94.1 million. And so with that, the goal strategically is to have 75% of our operational revenue in reserves. I think it is in anticipation of various generation increases, et cetera. So that will allow us to operate in a fiscally responsible way in the marketplace, having very strong reserves. So with that, will come a shift in our philosophy where we will have had the reserves, built those up very quickly, and then can move to a 50-50 split in years 2021 through 23-24, where 50% of the surplus of that net revenue, last year that was $44 million, can go to savings for customers, and the other 50% can go to programs. And of course, this is all up to our policy board and our community advisory council, as well as our operations board, to figure out what's the best mix in terms of serving customers with savings as well as communities with programs. Next slide. So with this, you're looking at a budget slide here, and what you can see in fiscal year 18-19, $5 million went to programs. I'll touch on those. $14 million went to rebates. That will be $19 million for fiscal year 19-20. And then you can see the reserves building and then basically dropping as we meet that 75% threshold. And then that sort of 50-50 split between customer savings and programs, ranging from anywhere to 20 million a year each for customer savings and also for programs. So a significant amount of revenue with which we can help invigorate our communities with renewable energy projects and programs. Next slide, we'll touch on service offerings. So right now, MB Choice, as mentioned, that was that pie chart. This is the default carbon-free service offering. This matches PG&E's rates plus a 7% discount. And then for those who would like to drop out the hydroelectric component of that power procurement model, we've got MB Prime. And so for a penny more per kilowatt hour, essentially, you can have just solar and wind energy out of California, also with a 7% discount. So those are the two service offerings. Just a quick touch on the customer savings and a sample bill. So as mentioned in the intro, this is a shared customer bill. So what people will see as we move into enrollment is they will see Monterey Bay Community Power electric generation charges on the front of the bill. This is not a new charge. This is essentially local communities taking over that electric generation. We'll all still pay the transmission and distribution costs as well as all the other taxes and various fees. And we'll be doing some detailed presentations of that when we move into our public workshops, when we move forward in the fall with our outreach here. So let's see, let's go to the next slide. That was the PG&E customer bill savings. Next slide. You can see it as line 3 there. Next slide. This is just a detailed sheet. Next slide. Next slide, please. And now you can see a generation credit coming back from PG&E, breaks out the power charge and difference adjustment and the franchise fee. And then you go to the last page, which I think is 2 slides, one more, and now you've got your Monterey Bay Community Power billing statement on its own page for the electric generation. So with that, next slide. There you go. So we've touched on the customer savings moving from 3% to 7%. This pertains to all residential customers, small and medium-sized customers, large commercial agricultural customers as well. And we'll give some examples of those kind of savings when we return for our public workshop so that people can get a sense as to how substantial those savings end up being for some of the larger commercial customers. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of a residential E1 customer. For those that can see the generation rate on the top, you can see that PG&E starts with a little over 11 cents per kilowatt hour. We're a little over 8 cents. Next line is the delivery rate. Let's see. He'll sort it out. The delivery rate, about 14 cents a kilowatt hour. Everybody pays that. And then we include this power charge and difference adjustment, which represents a significant portion of our budget as part of our retail rate. So that part is basically built in. And then it includes the franchise fee. And then with the monthly generation costs, you're looking at just a little over 11 cents per kilowatt hour. And then you're looking at about $5 a month per savings compared to the investor-owned utility. And this is for a 500 kilowatt residential customer as an example. So $60 a year in terms of bill savings for a small residential customer for clean energy. Now, one thing is important in terms of energy discount programs. Thank you. That for folks that are taking advantage of the California alternative rates for energy, the CARE program, or the Family Electric Rate Assistance Program, FARA, or Medical Baseline, as well as LIHEAP for low-income energy assistance for funds that help people prevent shutoffs. All of these income-qualified programs, which are being currently accessed through PG&E, still available with Monterey Bay Community Power. So essentially, as a customer, as a residential customer, you can avail yourselves of these programs as well as the clean energy and the customer savings from Monterey Bay Community Power. They are not mutually exclusive. PG&E employees as well continue to receive their discounts. Next slide. So with that, discount programs remain the same. You can go to the next slide. And this is a rooftop solar customers comparison. So for those people who have invested in putting solar on either their home or their business and their net energy metering customers, what we've decided to do from a policy standpoint is to at least pay those who are generating excess energy at the end of the year halfway between our wholesale and our retail rate. Not over-incentivizing, because right now there's more renewable energy on the grid during the middle of the day than there is demand to offtake it, but we felt it was important to show our support in that regard by paying those folks a little over 6 cents per kilowatt hour for that excess generation versus PG&E's 3 cents per kilowatt hour. We do the same in terms of true-ups, annual or monthly, though we do provide a 7% discount as well. Let's see, next slide. So for the estimated cost savings for Morro Bay, and see if I can take this off and focus a little bit here. What you can see, this is updated from your last projection, if you will. I think the last was a 5-year projection. So here we've got a 6-year projection, fiscal year 2020 to 2025, and this shows a 7% customer discount in the first fiscal year, and then after 2020, an 8% customer discount from fiscal years 2021 through 2025. So for residential customers in Morro Bay, first-year savings look to be about $106,000. For commercial, about $140,000, totaling almost $250,000. And if you run that projection out the 6 years, you're looking at residential customer savings, at least at this time, of about $712,000 for all residential customers and about $942,000 for all commercial customers. So a total of about $1.655 million in customer bill savings over the next 6 years. And then the projections for the entire San Luis Obispo County, as seen before, with the update, is on the order of about $43.5 million. So with that, let's turn our attention to the next slide. So for the city of Morro Bay, as its own commercial customer, if you will, I wanted to get some numbers for you all. And what the city of Morro Bay as a commercial customer would have paid from July of 18 to June of 19 was estimated to be about $167,692. And what the city of Morro Bay would have paid as an MBCP customer with a 7% rebate would have been $155,727. So that is about close to $12,000 savings in procuring power from Monterey Bay Community Power. And that's on a total usage of a little over 2 million kilowatt hours for streetlights, public facilities that the city runs, et cetera. Next slide. For energy programs, a quick overview, as mentioned, 4 to 5% of gross revenue being set aside per year for energy programs. Our intention in terms of moving forward our electrification strategic plan is really to focus on electrifying transportation, the built environment, and focusing on distributed energy resources and microgrids. Where can we place power in critical facilities so that these facilities are up and running regardless of what may or may not be intermittent power from the electric grid. So with that, we've had some immediate success in our first year delivering programs. We partnered with our regional air district in Monterey and put together a electric vehicle incentive program, which is still running with over $1 million in incentives for people to discount the purchase of electric vehicles. And then we put about $100,000 into no-cost solar for those who could qualify for this program. It was about 24 homes, I believe, that got solar at no cost. And this was in partnership with a great nonprofit called Grid Alternatives, which brings a workforce training component in to the work that they're doing. So while they're installing the solar, they're teaching people how to do it at the same time. It's a wonderful program. Along with that, end of October, we're going to deploy an electric vehicle infrastructure program called Cal EVIP. And with this is a $1 million contribution from Monterey Bay Community Power, as well as $6 million coming from the California Energy Commission. So what we hope to do in our Tri-County area is to bring in maybe 600 level 2 chargers, 150 DC fast chargers, and put these into the commercial sector, hopefully some multifamily res, which is a hard place to bring electric vehicle charging, and kind of hit that market that isn't 10 or more for a big commercial or 1 or 2, something in between, and try and provide the infrastructure along with the incentives for the EVs so that we can basically take all of this renewable energy that's on the grid during the day and use it to power our transportation because it's available. Moving to enrollment. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. We've got 4 mailers that are required by law, and so we'll go through a quick timeline in terms of our community outreach plan. We're very excited about that. And then we'll be doing events and workshops, obviously advertising. We've got a call center that's based out of Monterey for Community Choice Energy, and they have great expertise in terms of answering billing questions for customers, both residential and commercial. They're in the building right next door to us. Next slide. And so for the timeline for these required notices, this is from the California Energy, not Energy Commission, but the CPUC rather. The requirement is that there be a notice 60 days prior to enrollment. That would be first notice in November. This would be going out to all residential and commercial customers. Another notice in December, 30 days prior, and then January of 2020 will be the meter transition on the meter read date. So that'll vary depending on when your meter was initially initiated with the investor-owned utility in January. That'll be your enrollment date. And so with that, 2 other notices follow, one in February, post-enrollment, and another in March. And so basically what this does is it bookends our enrollment with 4 months for people to get to understand what Community Choice Energy is, who Monterey Bay Community Power is, how we're working with the community on our various common strategic goals. And during that period, customers have the option. They can always opt out at no cost. They can remain with PG&E if that is their choice. And then after that period, there is a small administrative fee if customers do decide to opt out. Residential customers pay a $5 fee and then wait a year if they want to join back in later, and commercial customers $25. So that's a little overview of the enrollment requirements in terms of noticing. And what we're going to do is we'll be sending a variety of collateral in terms of mail. We know that people are inundated with mail, so we're going to have a letter. We're going to have a couple different size postcards. So we're going to have direct mailers for our net energy metering customers specifically. And so hopefully with all of this, people will pay attention along with the public work that we're going to be doing. So the public forums in partnership with the city, we're going to host 2 public forums, one in November. It will likely be right here. Love to have the mayor or the city council perhaps introduce us at the public meeting. That would be wonderful. And another one in February, post-enrollment. So for those people that are now enrolled and have billing questions, we'll have another forum. And we'll be doing this both in Morro Bay as well as San Luis Obispo. I think we're looking at dates 12th and 13th of November for the 2 cities, and last week in February for the sort of post-public meetings. We've got a team on our strategic account side that's going to dedicate time for the top 100 energy customers. We've got very competent and skilled staff that have a lot of experience in managing large customer accounts, and so we're going to be reaching out to those stakeholders directly and answering any questions they have about their various potential billing changes. We're also looking at having some dedicated office hours. We're looking for space, actually. The idea is that we would be on site and available at least 1 day a week, maybe 11 to 2, where folks could come in, ask questions, get to know more about the changeover, and that might be on, say, a Thursday. Obviously, the community organizations, which really ties into our outreach plan, this is going to be offering presentations to a broad variety of stakeholders, from the nonprofit sector to the environmental sector, the business chambers and business community, senior organizations, the schools, water districts, et cetera. So we've got a long list to activate between now and April, and we're really looking forward to meeting your community members. I mentioned the particular NEM mailer, and so let's go to the next slide in terms of outreach activities. And so on the media side, we've got some great skilled staff that have done a superior job in terms of enrolling 275,000 customers for our Tri-County area. So we've got good experience in launching programs, and they will provide the written material, We'll have various talking points for those that want to engage media, perhaps contribute op-eds to press coverage, and they'll be doing social media as well. So they're going to be doing a media tour to meet folks down in San Luis Obispo County, second weekend in October, and second week rather in October, and that'll be the first in terms of making contact with all the folks at the papers as well as the radio stations, etc. And then we'll do an e-bike raffle. This is just to raise awareness about the incoming enrollment and do a giveaway. We've been doing one of those every quarter up our way. And then we've got advertising and sponsorships, as mentioned, bus placards, print ads, radio spots, sponsor entities, etc. So a lot to activate in the next 4 months, and we're excited to do that. And to do that, next slide, is upcoming job opportunities. So we are looking for folks that are down in this area. We're looking for an energy public engagement associate, an accounts analyst that can help us with that strategic accounts outreach with our current manager, and an energy programs analyst. So if you know folks that have the skills and the knowledge of the local community, please point them in the direction of our website. The jobs are posted, and we're in recruitment right now. Next slide. This is just essentially a detail in terms of what the overview is in terms of rolling out enrollment. Presentations to the councils this month, beginning our outreach to commercial customers and key stakeholders. We attended the Avocado Margarita Festival in San Luis Obispo, and we'll be here for the Harbor Festival coming up on the 5th and the 6th. And with that, all of that outreach will continue through April. You can see the mailers here for November and December. We're also looking at a utility bill insert for both San Luis Obispo and Morro Bay Water Agency bills as yet another way to remind folks of the upcoming change in electric generation moving to Monterey Bay Community Power. Next slide. So with that, I think that carries us out to April, continuing with our outreach, and then presentations to sort of wrap things up and circle back with your council and the Council of San Luis Obispo in April, and then continuing our outreach post-enrollment through June. And with that, we land on the Unified Central Coast for community choice aggregation. So we've been, I think, back and forth across the United States probably 6-7 times in the last 3 or 4 months in terms of providing the same offering to the remaining cities in San Luis Obispo County, as well as Santa Barbara County, as well as the County of Santa Barbara. And so with that, it looks like we have another 11 jurisdictions which are excited to onboard with Monterey Bay Community Power comes December 4th. And then, once again, they'd have to wait a year, and we would go through a much larger enrollment next fall. So with that, proven customer savings, delivering local energy, and local decision making. And that is your quick update. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mark, thank you. Very comprehensive and very exciting to be part of this early. By the way, we're even. The Avocado Margarita Festival was in Morro Bay, not Slow, just so you know. So we are even now.
Okay.
Okay. So I just wanted to just get that out. Council, any questions for Mark on this very comprehensive presentation? Comment or question? Sure. Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm sure you said this, but how do people enroll specifically and when exactly?
The when will happen on their normal bill date for January.
Okay.
And what will happen is that all customer accounts will essentially migrate over to Monterey Bay Community Power in January. So that part of the enrollment will happen without customers having to do anything. It will just end up being a new line item essentially on the PG&E customer bill.
So only if they want to opt out?
So only if they want to opt out, and then they would essentially go through the website, or they could call the customer call number and opt out that way too.
And then we have, I don't mean to put you on the spot, and I
Yeah.
know that you're not in charge of the shutoffs. It's a different company. But we have had people that have contacted us that are concerned about the shutoffs and have questions, like if there is a shutoff, will we still have a shutoff if we're with Monterey Community Power? And if you could speak to that.
Yeah, so that's a
tiny
great
bit.
question. We've been attending the Office of Emergency Services meetings with folks in our tri-county, which has included and essentially being hosted, if you will, by Pacific Gas and Electric, with police, fire, sheriff, communications, et cetera. And so the way that we are participating with this, since all of the infrastructure is really on the investor-owned utility side, folks who have questions about the public safety power shutoff need to be working with PG&E. We're working as a force multiplier to basically communicate the messaging that folks need to be very proactive in terms of these public safety power shutoffs. They need to be signing up for alerts from their local county's Office of Emergency Services so that they can be notified in advance. There's supposed to be a 48-hour, 24-hour noticing before there is a public safety power shutoff. So with that, there's also an important point to make that for folks that need medical devices, they should really be thinking about backup power for this public safety power shutoff incidents, which, as we were told, it's not a matter if they're going to occur, it's just a matter of when. And so, and then as we know with managing all natural disasters, everybody should be prepared, right? Whether it's an earthquake, it's a fire, or some other situation, we should all have extra food, extra water, extra medicine, get to know your neighbors, have a community emergency plan, et cetera. So.
And then you mentioned a number of programs, but which of those would be available to Morro Bay customers?
For Morro Bay and the city of San Luis Obispo, we would be migrating NBC's community power programs for local residents and businesses comes next fiscal year. And so as mentioned, this year, and we've got a sort of a host of other programs that we're looking at right now. We just developed a strategic template for our electrification strategic plan so that we can be evaluating the various metrics in terms of job creation, local job creation, greenhouse gas reduction, maybe community resiliency around energy. And that template has a variety of idea sets that fit into that electrifying transportation, the built environment, and distributed energy resources. And so that was first brought forward as a summary last week to our Community Advisory Council, and then it's going to go to the Operations Board. And so out of that process, we're going to have a list that will continue to develop in terms of what we're going to be delivering in the future, but we're just in the process of really working through that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Davis, nothing. Councilmember McPherson, Councilmember Heller, questions? Great. Mark, thank you again for being here. Look forward to the open enrollment period and all the information. Very comprehensive overview. Thank you. Again, proud as a city to be part of this great organization.
Well, we're very pleased to have you, and we're excited to work with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Okay, that moves us to general public comment. Any members of the audience wishing to address any items on the agenda for which you can't stay and or anything else, please do so now. And I'll start with my cards that I have. First up is Joan Solu. Welcome, Joan. Looks like you're ready to rock. Good.
Oh, he's taller than me.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Joan Solu, and I'm on the board of the Community Foundation, thank you, Estero Bay. Many of my board members are here with me tonight. I would like to take a moment to let you know about the Foundation's only annual fundraising event, Morro Bay Sings, and this year it's the Beach Boys. The doors open at 5 p.m. on Saturday, October 12th. The evening features dinner catered by the Galley Seafood Grill and Bar, Tognazzini's Dockside Restaurant, and Doc Bernstein's Ice Cream. The fun begins when crooner troubadour Jody Mulgrew returns with his band to play hits from the Beach Boys. Jody grew up in Morro Bay prior to starting his professional career. In addition, Voix, an a cappella group from Cuesta College, whose harmonies are perfectly suited for the Beach Boys, will return to our stage. Individual tickets are available for $50. Tables of 8 and 10 are also available and come with a bottle of wine. This year, there are some terrific and exciting auction items. We have been fortunate enough, through generous supporters, to have a week in a villa in Cabo San Lucas, a week in a condo in Paradise, Kailua, Kona, Hawaii, and some unbelievable bottles of California wine, a zipline excursion, a private Middle Eastern dinner for 8 with exclusive performance by renowned belly dancer Majida, 4 tickets behind home plate with VIP parking for an LA Dodgers game, and did I mention some great bottles of California wine? Tickets can be purchased at communityfoundationesteropay.org. That's communityfoundationesteropay.org. The city's rec department at the community center, Coalesce Bookstore on Main Street. Now, about the foundation. And the slide is up. About the foundation, we provide financial support to low-income families so their children can participate in recreational sports, aquatic, and enrichment programs organized by the City of Morro Bay, South Bay Soccer, and Coast Little League. The foundation offsets a major portion of the registration fees and, in some cases, 100% of the fees and activities. To be eligible for the foundation's funding, the child must qualify for a free meal at school. This means that their family of 4 cannot have an income that exceeds $32,000. During the last fiscal year, the foundation helped 336 children enroll in recreational programs and paid out $51,000 in scholarships. By far, both fiscally and in human value. The foundation's greatest accomplishment this past year was providing free swim lessons to 141 children. Over 90% of these children attended multiple sessions, helping them to become proficient swimmers. Swimming is not only healthy and fun for kids, but is also the only recreational program which in the future has the opportunity to save a child's life. We will hope to be even more successful this year, but we need the community's support. Please attend Morro Bay Sings. Get your tickets today at communityfoundationesteropay.org. Join the fun and come and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, that was well timed. By the way, Joan, what's your favorite Beach Boys song? I'm just curious.
Well, because I'm from around here, it's got to be California Girls.
Okay, good, great, thank you. Great, and thank you for all the work that you do. Great event, I look forward to it. Next up for public comment is MH Parks. Linda Winters, Mobile Home Park Linda, as she likes to be known. Come on down.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. First off, I have to say thank you to the council for recognizing Sea Otter Awareness. I worked with that group for 20 years, and I'm proud to say that they do a wonderful job. I'm here tonight to give you a little bit of a progress report on mobile home parks, but also need to say thank you to everyone for helping to honor our neighbor, 95-year-old World War II vet, George Oberlin, at the last meeting. He was quite touched by your applause and greetings. It was a good thing we only had a few more moments left for him to speak. He could have told us World War II stories for, like, we'd still be here. Now for mobile home park news. Progress in the past 6 months that we have accomplished 3 significant goals. Number 1, on building good communications regarding our city's rent control ordinance, i.e. how to implement parts of it and where it needs to revision, and it does. We would like to be a part of that revision. Number 2, learning that the state is very close to passing a rent control ordinance AB 1485 that excludes mobile home parks throughout the state. This is a very good thing for us. The state rate could be much higher than our rent cap for our city ordinance. It could be as high as 10%. Number 3. In building that line of communication, and this has to do with the C2 item, with the city regarding mobile home parks, the city has contacted us to discuss and develop a way to give Morro Bay mobile home residents that receive help from PG&E on utilities, the CARE program, additional help on their water and sewer bills. This is covered in tonight's agenda in the C2 item. We are very much in favor of that item. We will help in any way we possibly can to implement that. I may not be here for that particular item because my favorite TV show is having its season opener tonight at 9 o'clock, and if we don't happen to be through, I'm not going to be here. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on October 8th, and don't melt.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate that. And next up for public comment is Erica Crawford, our Chamber President CEO. Welcome, Erica.
Have a little flyer if AGP could help me out with the overhead. Just a couple quick announcements, but to Erica Crawford, thank you very much, Honorable Mayor and Council, for having us. Giving us an opportunity to address you. I want to absolutely thank our Morro Bay Police and our Morro Bay Fire for their assistance and presence at the 13th Annual Avocado and Margarita Street Festival 2 weeks ago. That many people on one site, having your staff around and present, brought us a great sense of security and kind of secured a successful event that was safe and enjoyed by all. So thank you very much, and please thank your staffs for being there. Also, I have to thank Morro Bay Community Power as a sponsor for that event. I think the overhead's coming up. Thank you. Just here to announce that we are doing our second Women Making Waves. This will be celebrating women in the fields of arts and entertainment this Monday, September 30th, at the Siren. It's live performances will be interspersed in a panel this time. Our aim is to include sort of experiential components to this talk series. So it'll be a panel, and then we'll have stand-up comedy, music, singing, spoken word by Janice Peters with By the Sea Productions. And our moderator is Sarah Santana, who has Santana Wealth Management right here in Morro Bay and was one of the top 20 under 40 award recipients from the Tribune. And so it's $10. Sorry, zoning out, it's a little warm. $10. Tickets will be available at the door. Happy hour at the Siren is from 5 to 6, and the program starts at 6. And then this is kind of coming together. Morro Bay Chamber and Morro Bay Rotary will be doing a membership mashup for the month of October. So October 1st, 8th, 22nd, and 29th. We'll be focusing on economic and community development as two memberships coming together. So Scott Collins, our city manager, and I will open it up on October 1st, and then we're kind of playing with the order of our other guests, who are to include Scott Graham and a planning commissioner to speak about the community development process, Andrew Hackelman and Melissa James from the Hourglass Project to talk regional, and Steve Peck to talk the craft of planning and development from his own voice and what it's like to do business in cities. So it should be great. It's 11:30 to 1 p.m. on each of those Tuesdays at the golf course. Lunch is included. It's $15, and Morro Bay Chamber members and Rotary members are welcome. Thanks.
Erica, I missed the date on the Women Making Waves.
Women Making Waves is on Monday. So this upcoming Monday starts at 5 at the Siren. It's the 30th of September.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next up is Cindy Batante regarding item C2. Cindy, welcome.
I'll go ahead and start. Mr. Mayor, Council, I totally voice my support for Agenda Item C2, extending the utility rebate program to help the impact on our qualified low-income ratepayers living in mobile home parks and apartments. And I applaud all who work to make that possible. I wanted to speak to the other side of the equation, which is raising funds to support these programs. Recently, I've talked to a few folks just around town. Not one person that I spoke to realized that or were aware that they could donate to help support these assistant programs. And until recently, I thought the only way to donate was to check a little mark on my payment slip and send my monthly check in, or I could pay my bill late, and then my late fee would go to that. Just poking around the internet, I found other communities on the web, and I have like 11 or 12 links all over the country who have a program to promote donations for these kinds of activities called H2O, or Help to Others. And so I would like to see the council consider a similar program here in our community. It's my understanding right now we have money already funded for our assistance programs, but I am concerned that that's a stable, reliable source, and I think there's a lot of wealth in our community and a lot of people who would like to help if they just knew about it. So I will admit that I stole the little icon up here, so don't reuse it unless you figure out where I got it. But, you know, we need to get the word out that this program exists. We need to let people know why they need to donate, and make it easy. And one of the ways we can make it easy is if we can set up some kind of a subscription or direct auto payment. And then letting people know through reporting, maybe quarterly, biannual, and then providing people a letter at the end of the year for tax purposes. And so I'd appreciate it if the council would consider doing that.
Great, Cindy. Thank you so much. Great idea. Appreciate that. General public comment for items on the agenda for which you can't stay or items not on the agenda is still open. Sean, welcome.
Hello, I'm Sean Green, Morro Bay. Similar to the comment in the agenda correspondence about appeal fee increases discouraging public participation in local government, I do think that delaying the public comment period to 1 hour into the meeting also hurts the ability for a lot of people to participate. So just maybe something to keep in mind moving forward. But I'm going to say something positive. So bear with me as I go through this little sequence of events. I don't like to go to any business that posts a sign that says no public restrooms. I don't like to eat at a waterfront restaurant that crowds the public walkways with tables and chairs or puts a strategically placed planter in front of the coastal access sign. And I don't even like to be friends with Morro Bay residents who put a no parking sign in an area where they know very well you can park in. All of these feed into kind of a get off my lawn mentality that Morro Bay is increasingly known for countywide. All right? On the flip side, I want to thank some entities that do it the right way and provide examples of something that we can all live by. A couple years ago, Breakers Hotel turned over into the landing at Morro Bay, and they took down that pool, and they cut down that hedge, and they put that public park there that fundamentally changed that intersection in the best way. The Historical Society of Morro Bay and Glen Silloway are doing so much constructive work putting together stories, hidden history stories of Morro Bay. And 3 signs are placed along the waterfront, and they're raising money to do more, and the city can help them with that, as well as individuals. And any business submitting plans for development can consider those signs as part of the public benefit that they provide during that development. I encourage everyone to check out those signs. The most recent one is put out in front of Otter Rock. And lastly, Morro Bay in Bloom, which we're all pretty familiar with, does so much for the city and carries the weight far beyond anyone can expect them to, with their leader, Walter Heath, which many of us know. When I see them out there working, I almost feel guilty that I haven't pulled my weeds that week. And so I just want to say thank you to all those three leaders in this community that we can all use as an example. And an additional plug to Morro Bay and Bloom. I actually discovered this on Amazon, instead of just going to Amazon.com when making purchases, and this includes city people who buy things on Amazon. If you type in smile.amazon.com and name Morro Bay in Bloom as the recipient, they get 0.5% of that purchase as a donation. So something to keep in mind without actually changing your purchase price. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate the input very much. General public comments still open. For any members of the public wishing to come forward, please do so now. Welcome, Betty.
Good evening. My name's Betty Winholtz. I have a question that was on the Coastal Commission agenda via the director's report at the September meeting. And what it said at that, I'll quote from the website of the Coastal Commission, and it's referring to our Adopt Plan Morro Bay, Task 7. And it says the city, quote, "The city is working on amending its LCP grant agreement to remove local adoption from the grant term given the extensive comments the city received on its LCP policies. Local adoption and submittal to the Coastal Commission for certification will likely occur in 2020. So my question is, what does it mean to remove local adoption? Does that mean we don't get a local hearing like we didn't get with the WRF? Does it mean something else? But I'd like to know what kind of deal is being made with Coastal about our general plan and zoning ordinance. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment still open for any items on the agenda for which can't stay or other items. Looking around. Bless you. Looking around, seeing none, I will close public comment, bring it back to the council. Thanks so much for all of the general comments. One question for Ms. Winholtz. Mr. Graham, you want to take that? Regarding the amendment for the LCP to remove local adoption, what does that mean?
Happy to address that item. Yes, we've been working with the Coastal Commission for several years now. We've received one grant from the Ocean Protection Council and 2 grants from the Coastal Commission. The round 3 grant is terming out. Part of the reason we haven't come to a point where we're ready for adoption is it's been a long review process on the part of Coastal staff. They recognize that, and we were working with them on how we close out the grant process, and they said we can remove that one item, local adoption, as a deliverable item for the grant, and we can close the grant out, and meaning we can fully draw it down. We will be moving forward with the update process, and of course we will have public hearings as it relates to the adoption of Plan Morro Bay, which is the update of the general plan, local coastal program, and zoning code. And we will be sending all of those documents off to Coastal for certification when we're done. So,
great. Thank you for that. Ms. Weinholz also mentioned no public hearing regarding the WRF, and I will just personally say there were numerous public hearings. I disagree completely, and they are well noted in the minutes over the last couple of years and numerous years with the City Council, and I'll just make that comment. Thank you. With that, I will move to the consent agenda and open up public comment for consent, items A1 through A8. Any members of the public wishing to come forward on consent items, please do so now. Looking around, seeing none, I will close public comment on consent and ask if council would like to pull any. I'd like to pull item A3. Any others? I already asked for that, and nobody stood up, and I waited for a minute. Nobody stood up. Did you want to comment, Betty? Okay, perhaps you might want to pay attention. When I mention that, go ahead and come forward. I'll open it up again.
I have 6 questions I'd like to ask about A2, if that gets pulled. The first one has to do with 1.1.1 when it talks about easements, and it only mentioned one of the easements that is required. And so my question is, do you need to get an easement from Mr. Mino, the adjacent landowner? In 1.1.3, my question is, could you define project? Does project mean the whole WRF, or does it mean just that specific recycling part? And in 1.1.4, they omitted the fact that they did post the addendum, but they didn't say that in the, I don't know if that's not important then to know that it was finally posted on the website. In 1.2, my question is, how do you break ground in October if you only have 90% of the design completed, which won't be submitted until November? So I didn't understand that timeline. And in 1.4, my question was about the well. Is this the well that the city closed when Dynegy had the power plant? And what were the restrictions placed on the well at the time of closure? And in your table 5, it talks about a PPP, a pollution prevention plan, and about another kind of plan, and how one may substitute for the other. And my question is, what are the pros and cons of that, because they're not identified in your staff report? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, public comment was closed and opened and closed again if there's nobody else wanting to come forward. I'll go ahead and pull item A2 as well. Any other items to pull? If not, I will take a motion for approval of A1, A5, A4, A5, A6, A7, and A8.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Davis, second by Councilmember McPherson to approve all but A2 and A3. Any questions or comments? None? Roll call vote.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember McPherson?
Yes.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great, and I'll put A2 and ask Mr. Leivik or whoever might want to respond. 1.1.1, the easements, I understand we do not need an easement from Mr. Mano next door. Is that correct, Mr. Leivik?
That's correct.
Thank you. Item 1.1.3, define the project definition.
The item refers to special conditions. Special conditions 1 and 2 relate to the work facility component of the project. Oh, I have to stop now.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And condition 6 refers to the entire multi-components of the project.
Great. 1.1.4 omitted the fact post. That the fact that it was posted on the website, I don't think that's material,
Apologize
but
for that,
thank you.
We'll make sure it's
You've apologized
noted.
previously. 1.2, how do you break ground in October when you're only 90% design?
That's one of the major advantages of a design build contract is you can start before plans are 100% complete. So they'll be, the city will be approving a grading plan in sometime in October, and we will start grading on the project as long as we have a coastal permit first. And then we'll have various other plans that will be submitted that will be approved for construction in due course.
Okay, and table 5, pros and cons. If you have that in front of you.
Yes, I'm looking for that right now. The difference between the pollution prevention plan and the enhanced source control plan. The pollution prevention plan was a requirement of our time schedule order. It's how are we going to reduce BOD and suspended solids from entering the ocean. The way that that gets accomplished is we build a secondary facility and we meet the permit requirement. So it's really a moot point with a new secondary plant. The Enhanced Source Control Program is a requirement of the Division of Drinking Water to ensure that cities that are proposing potable reuse projects, either indirect or direct potable reuse, that they understand what things will be put down the drain from their industrial customers and work with them to reduce those discharges to the sewer system. So Morro Bay is small enough where we've never had a source control program, but cities nearby, San Luis Obispo has a source control program where they have an inspector that goes into businesses and makes sure that they understand what can and cannot be discharged to sewer.
Great. And the last question, 1.4 on the well.
The well.
Dynegy restrictions question?
So the Dynegy Morro Bay Mutual Water Company was working on a replacement well on the facility a few years ago. They received a coastal development permit from the city. That permit was appealed by the California Coastal Commission. Dynegy withdrew their project because they were in the process of shutting down, so they didn't need that well. Coastal Commission has decided that issuance of the coastal development for our project allows use of that well for at least testing purposes.
Great, thank you. With that, I'll move approval of agenda item A-2.
Second.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? Not, roll call vote?
Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Councilmember McPherson?
Yes.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great, and I pulled A3. There's been a lot of talk recently about the public safety power potential shutoffs by PG&E. The city manager, myself, Chief Knuckles, and Chief Cox last week for a full day attended the FEMA, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agencies, National Training and Education Division presentation. There was a very extensive review of a number of incidents that could be potentially disastrous in the county. All cities and the county as well was represented at the meeting. And I thought I would ask the chief to comment not only on that program in general, but give us an update on PSPS. And if Chief Knuckles, if you would do that, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. And it was a great class, a good overview of the different type of emergency planning we have to do within our cities and county. And as it was discussed at the class, and the system that we use and the emergency plan that we do have, it is standardized not only with our city and county, but also with the state and also with the federal government. We're pretty blessed as a city. In the past, that we have done extensive training with our employee group and also with our volunteers on not just our emergency plan, but EOC, that we're starting off a kickoff very soon, starting off with the City Council, the policymakers, on your training on your role in our Emergency Operations Center. That will lead to further training for our EOC folks, the folks in city employees, and also volunteers that would be working in our EOC, and then also our field workers. Just a few months ago, you approved our latest emergency management plan that we've had. It is the new FEMA footprint, and the blessing of that plan is that that throughout California and the nation, that our plan has the same exact format and process and language and the use of incident command system that has proven to work so well for the last few decades. With the current status of the power shutoff, public safety power shutoff, it is valid. Every day I learn more and more from PG&E on Why is it so devastating to a community our size? Right now, currently, in Northern California, up in Nevada County area, Grass Valley, Yuba County, they have approximately 24,000 residents that are turned off right now for a high wind event with high temperature, low relative humidity, and they have it turned off. Do not know how long they are going to turn it off. They are supposed to notify us within 48 hours, but so far, I think there's only been one event. They gave us proper notification of 48 hours. And the disadvantage of our community with the big switch yard in the backyard behind the old Morro Bay power plant, that powers most of southern San Luis Obispo County. And PG&E does not have the infrastructure to isolate in a smaller customer base. Southern California Edison, for example, has better infrastructure to isolate their customers. So, for example, Goleta was on, I'm not quite sure if Goleta is turned off today for the wind event down in Santa Barbara County, but they were able to isolate down to about 650 residents. Compared to our situation, if we do have a high wind event with offshore winds, with high temperatures, low humidity, in our Los Padres forest area, just the area where we had the fire going on right now outside of Rio Grande, there's a possibility not just sections of our town, but the complete town being turned off, and turned off for multiple days because they would have to inspect every line before they turn the power back on. So we have to prepare for the worst. Your city staff is working on a plan currently right now. There's a lot of issues that we have to address if our power goes off. And it's a little bit different. For example, if we had a tsunami or an earthquake, portions of our town will go off, power will go off, or would need services or extra services. This is kind of unique. It's just looking at the complete town, not just isolating portions of the town. So it does take a little bit more planning, but your staff is working on that, and hopefully we are going to have a written plan all ready to go. So when it does happen this year, next year, year after that, PG&E was asked to do a study with CAL FIRE to determine how many times their power had been turned off in the last 5 years within our county, different weather events. And with the new equipment that PG&E has installed, especially on the Highway 41 corridor, just east of our city, we have been told that there have been 3 times in the last 5 years our power has been turned off. So we have to prepare for it. And not only as a government, city, but also as individuals. Currently on pgne.com, residents can learn more about the process, learn more about when they shut it off, and also they can sign up for what they call baseline medical. Basically, it's a service that they have to reduce your PG&E bill, but they're using that as a list to give to us of possibility of folks that are medically dependent on electronics. We're also working with the public health officer in our county to get a better list of more individuals and other nonprofits too in our county or in our city to help us knowing who is medically dependent on electricity in our community. So the best advice that I can give is stay aware what's going on. And sign up on pgne.com to be notified as quick as possible when the power is going to be going off. I wish I can tell you if and when it's going to occur, but I will find out the same exact time you find out when this events occur in our state and in our county.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for your leadership also with the multiple agencies. I know you've taken a leadership role in that and certainly have done a great job in our city in preparing us. There have been a number of constituents that have called us. I'm hearing from other council members, and we've gotten some emails regarding PSPS. Ladies and gentlemen, it's real. It is a real potential. It can produce significant negative health benefits or aspects, I should say, for individuals that are high risk, the frail elderly, those that are potentially dehydrated, have major chronic disease problems. And so being aware of when is a critical piece, but also being ready in case it occurs, and that is having appropriate supplies, backup generation for devices, etc., and coming to community forums or going on to the website to get further information. And did you have any dates coming up where we will have community forums that will be occurring?
Well, we are going to be having a workshop on our mitigation plan, which is basically one of the first steps in developing an emergency plan. We won't be really discussing, but we can bring up some preparation for that. I do see us doing more of a structured outreach to our public via social media, via our website, via possible presentations at the fire department to help us out. But one of the ideas that one of the meetings I went to last week, a couple of cities are really concentrating too. If you have a relative that lives outside your city or lives outside the affected area, the best advice that we can give is to go stay with that relative during the time, especially if you are in need of electricity for your medical device. Another issue that is popped up, cell phone usage will be very hard to go through. A lot of our residents today do not have copper line going to their house for their phone lines. Well, we do have cell sites, antennas and repeaters that are on generation power, but they will be overloaded. So the ability to notify city for services and or other agencies will be can be tough for some folks. And another issue that's popped up, make sure that you're up on your prescription medications. The pharmacies in town will most likely close if the power goes out, especially multiple days. And our grocery stores will also, can close also. They do not have significant power supply or by a generator to keep them open.
Great, thank you. And the for information, it's pge.com, pge.com, to get information on the potential power service shutdown.
That's correct, and you can sign up for it to be notified by your address.
Okay.
And also, you'll see other maps of areas that are affected today, and you also can sign up for the medical baseline list that they're creating.
And is there something that will be posted on our city website, a link or something that people can go to as well?
That's affirmative.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Any questions of Chief Knuckles?
I have a question.
Yes.
We received a letter from somebody from an advocacy group that they were, I think, were sending to PG&E. But like, if people want to speak up about this, if they don't believe the shutoff is the right thing to do, they still need to prepare. But how do they voice to PG&E that they don't think this is the right way to go? Is it just an email to PG&E? And you may not have all the ins and outs of that.
Well, to cut it down, it's the Public Utility Commission has allowed this by allowing benchmarks for this to occur. PG&E and Southern California Edison are using the rulings from the Public Utility Commission. They has been addressed multiple times at hearings down in Oxnard and Camarillo area. Definitely as a city government, we have to take a look and see how we're going to address it, but it has been addressed multiple times through the Public Utilities Commissions, and PG&E and Southern California Edison's are using their rulings and their benchmarks to do the public safety power shutoff.
Thank you.
Great. With that, I will move approval of item A3.
Second.
A motion by Mayor Heading, second by Councilmember Davis, I think came in under the wire. Any further questions or discussion? Not, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Councilmember McPherson?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great. Thank you for that. We have no public hearings tonight. Business items. C1 is the Comprehensive Cost Allocation Plan and Fee Study update. This is, Council, this is a received staff presentation, and you'll note in the staff report they're looking for direction as necessary. And with that, I will turn it over to Jen Calloway, our Director of Finance. Jen.
Thank you. Good evening. This is kind of an update on our fee study and where we're at. Our consultant that completed the work is here, so if there's any questions on methodology or specific fees, Chu is available to answer those. We last heard this at the council level on July 9th, at which point Chu presented his results of his study, went through the process and the methodology for completing the study, and we asked for input from the council on the types of public comment that you would like to see, or how much public comment, consideration of facility, rentals, and then questions as we move throughout the summer, so we could come back with some more information for you that would be helpful in making decisions. So tonight's agenda, we're going to go over the public outreach that we did. We included all of the results from our survey in the council packet for you to review in advance of tonight. Also, discussion of our facility rentals and special events fees and partnership policy, as that plays a role into the fees for special events and facility rentals. Questions for the council, again, that's getting direction. Our goal is to come back, likely at this point at the end of October, given some of the other agenda items for October 8th. But we want to come back with a document that's pretty clean, hopefully, and adoptable at that point. So again, for council direction, we reviewed the full draft fee study on the 9th. We were directed to hold 2 community forums and to really maximize opportunities for public engagement. So we did, in fact, hold those two community forums. The first was on July 30th here at the Vets Hall. There were 7 people in attendance, 2 representatives from the chamber, and the remaining individuals were members of the fishing community. Therefore, there was significant discussion, all discussion related to harbor fees, specifically the dock rentals. Our consultant went through those fees and his methodology and calculating those. And the general consensus from that discussion was that the fishermen that would be most impacted by the dock rental fees were out fishing at this point. And they requested that we defer any recommendations on increasing those fees until we can have conversations with those affected parties in November timeframe. You'll see in our staff report that we feel we can accommodate that request and have those conversations in November with fees still going into effect, any changes in January. So we would come back to council on a separate discussion item for those. Our second community forum was on August 8th. Between 25 and 30 interested parties attended that meeting. The focus during that discussion primarily revolved around special events. We did have some discussion on some...
We've lost the presentation, sorry.
Permitting fees, well, that gets up there. Permitting fees as well. But generally speaking, it was on the recreation and special event fees. There was concern brought up about events that have early in the calendar year already scheduled, such as the Bird Festival was represented at the meeting, and they were seeking to start advertising their event and getting registration in. And if we increased fees, they wouldn't know what to make that registration in there. So we would recommend that any increases that go into effect for those agencies that have already signed and committed to rent city facilities, we wouldn't charge them the increased fees starting in January. Let's see, I'm on the right page, yes. Also, there was a concern expressed about City Park had been divided into multiple parks. That felt unfair to people holding events in that park. So we would recommend changing that and go down to 1 park rental fee rather than the 3 individual fees. So we'll be working on that, and that would come back in the next revision that you see. The Harbor Advisory Board meeting Harbor Advisory Board held 2 meetings, August 1st, September 5th. During those meetings, they went line by line through all of the harbor-related fees and had good conversation on that. About 40 interested parties attended on September 5th. Similarly to the dock rentals, they've asked that the liveaboards be deferred until further conversations can be had with affected parties, and we agree that we can accommodate that request and couple that with the dock rental fee discussions that we'll have in November. The recommendations of the Harbor Advisory Board are also included as an attachment to the staff report in attachment 3. We conducted a community outreach through our poll call community survey. We asked 4 questions, 4 pretty simple questions, and received input on those. The results are also included in the staff report as well as the comments that were received. That ran for about 1.5 months during the summer for that input. The city manager and myself met with the Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee on August 7th. We answered questions. The GAC, Government Affairs Committee's recommendations are included as attachment 4. In general, they discuss really streamlining processes so that the fees are reduced. And then we met with individual stakeholders and had discussions with them. Again, just to summarize quickly, delay discussion of the harbor fees for liveaboard and docking. Staff agrees with that and can accommodate that request. Based on the Polco surveys, there seems to be general community support for subsidization, particularly for youth and senior programming and nonprofits. Consider phasing in of larger percentage fee increases at some level, and then a commitment from the city to improve processing to accompany lower fees in the future. I'm going to turn it over to the city manager to talk about the facility rentals and event fees.
Thank you, Jen. So City Council in 2018, as part of the city goals process, had directed staff to come back with a review of the partnership policy, which does lend itself to the rentals and the event fees, because that's particularly what the partnership policy is about honoring those programs that provide a service that the city otherwise couldn't provide, like the Project Surf Camp provides services to very particular segments of the community, special needs community, that the city can't do. So in return, the city waives the fees for the ability of that program to be put on, and there's other examples of that as well. But that sort of opened up the discussion about kind of all the layers of subsidy that's already kind of baked into our existing fee schedule. And so we felt it was appropriate time to bring this back for discussion for council, not to make a final decision, but to provide guidance so that we could bring back a kind of holistic and comprehensive policy, maybe at the same time probably at the same time the fees come back for adoption. So currently there are several different tiers of subsidies provided to groups related to renting facilities and hosting public events in the city, some of which have council approval, some of which are sort of past practice. So city events, those are those that the city owns, like the 4th of July celebration, are 100% fee waivers. And then somewhat associated or closely associated with that are those events that we are a significant partner in, such as Amgen. We're an integral part of their planning process, the carrying out of the actual event. We had every single department basically involved, and it provided an opportunity for millions of folks across the world to see Morro Bay as a tourist destination and a place to recreate, et cetera. And so that instance, those fees were waived entirely as well. Then we have the partnership policy, which I just discussed. There are very few programs that are currently, or agencies that are currently have partnership policies. I think almost immediately after it was adopted, there was a discussion about maybe we should revise it. And here we are today, a couple of years later. So that is, like I said, that's an opportunity for the city to sort of honor those who are providing a service the city otherwise couldn't provide. And then we have a local nonprofit subsidy that's baked into our current fee schedule, but is also being recommended moving forward into the new one, where you could have anywhere from up to 0% out to almost 50% subsidy for the fee. And then we have a direct cost approach, which was an old practice that's still around for a few events that provides pretty close to what it takes to keep the building operating and a rental attendant. It's not the full freight for the facility use. So those are sort of what's existing at this time. Can you move forward? Sorry. So as far as the council questions related to at least the facilities and public event fees, I'll let Jen take it from there on the general questions. But the things that we kind of want to have guidance on from council tonight that can help us develop a policy that would square with what's being proposed in the fee study is that, is council wanting to maintain the subsidies for locals and nonprofits, they get the same rate? Do we want to add organizations into the partnership agreement tier? Thinking of the Monday night dinners, they provide a service to over 100 community members, many of them from Morro Bay, who otherwise may not be able to eat that evening. The city doesn't have the capabilities to provide that service, but we can provide the platform for them to provide that service. And currently they don't pay anything, but we don't have an agreement with them. So it'd be good to kind of button that up. And we heard from one of our council members, a couple of council members, about the good work that the Lions Club does. And they currently don't pay fees in the city, but we should probably move them into a partnership agreement or decide that's not the right thing to do and have them pay the fees. So that's another consideration. Another discussion point that's come up is, we do have events that come to town that bring significant economic impact. Those are the events that perhaps are multi-day events where they fill up hotel rooms on the shoulder seasons, where maybe we don't have visitors typically, thinking of things like Bird Festival, which is in the middle of winter and fills up hotel rooms for 3 days. Do we want to add additional subsidy, a small subsidy to kind of honor that economic benefit? The corollary there is that the Tourism Business Improvement District provides marketing funds, grant funds to those events that do bring economic benefit. And they use a different, they'd use a model or a kind of economic model to determine which things they should and shouldn't fund. But that, again, is for marketing purposes, whereas this would be to help kind of reduce the cost of putting on the event. And do you want to maintain, as council, a full subsidy for city-run events and for those major events in which we're a partner like Amgen? So those are just some questions that, we'd like to have council kick around and help provide guidance for a policy to bring back. Jen?
Sure. And then in addition, we listed some kind of general questions for the council we hope to get some feedback on tonight. Does the council wish to recommend any fees or set of fees to be lower than cost recovery? And again, what feedback we hear from you will incorporate in the fee study that we bring back for adoption. Is there interest in lieu of setting fees lower than cost recovery? Would there be interest in directing a percentage of fee revenues to some kind of economic development or incentive fund that would help maintain local control over that money and what you would like to fund or use it for? Do you wish to phase in fee increases? If so, is there a recommendation on the time frame? And then just to reiterate on the last page of the slideshow, which I lost, our recommendations that we are making tonight, and we would include in that, is to hold the public hearing for adoption. We have October 8th in here. I think after looking at agendas, we think we'll move that to October 24th to review and approve the fee increases. The development fees cannot go in effect until 60 days after that public hearing, so that's a pretty close time frame to go into effect for January 1. Again, so why we hope to bring back a really clean fee schedule for you to adopt on the 24th. Fees would go into effect on January 1 of 2020. However, we would honor the current rates as they are today for facility rentals and permit fees that were reserved prior to January 1. But occur after that date. We'll continue to have discussions with interested and affected parties on the liveaboard and dock rentals. We'll bring that back to the council either end of November, early December. Those do not require 60 days before they can go into effect. So we could adopt them at that time, and they could still go into effect on January 1 with the rest of the fees. And then also, it's not on this slide, but you will see in the new fee schedule, we'll be recommending adding $105 to the vacation rental permit fee to pay for our host compliance auditing of the vacation rentals. So just want you to expect to see that when the fee study or the fee schedule comes back. We provided some documents this afternoon and answers to many of the council questions, some comparisons of residential and commercial permit fees for how fees are today versus what the proposals are. So Mr. Graham can answer any questions about that as well.
Great. Thank you both. We have received the methodology and cost allocation plan previously from our consultant, and tonight we are considering providing input on the current recommendations for fee study. Staff, thank you for your presentation, both of you. Excellent. And I'll open it up with council questions and then go to public comment. So who'd like to start us off? Councilmember Davis?
Sure.
Thank you.
I sent a number of questions over the weekend and received answers to all of them. But I would like to ask a little more in depth about the Economic Development Incentive Fund, where that originated and what is the source of the funds and the purpose and so on.
It's purely conceptual, and actually it kind of came up in conversations I was having with you, and he kind of brought up the idea and we kind of went with it. The thought being, if the council chooses to seek something less than cost recovery, you have to pick, which fees are going to be less than cost recovery, which aren't. Is it new development, existing businesses? Who's going to get that subsidy? If there's an even playing field where we adopt fees at full cost recovery, you could direct a certain percentage of those fees be set aside into a special fund. Call it economic development incentives or whatever we'd like to call it. And then that money, we would come back with some policy, but council could direct the use of it. So you could support things such as maybe sidewalk cleaning is something you want to support for economic development, or maybe you want to give reduced fees to people that come forward with projects that meet specific needs, and we could offset that with the money in those funds. There's really a variety of things we could probably come up with. It's just conceptual in nature at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Addis.
I sent quite a few questions as well, and those were all answered via email. So I don't have more questions, but I have stuff when it's time for comment and discussion.
Thank you. Councilmember Heller. Sir.
I have a few questions. These are for the consultant. In looking at your executive summary, the purpose was to perform a cost analysis and developed a computerized cost distribution and cost control system for the city for its services. So is that part of what you've prepared for us, or have you just done the analysis part?
Yes, I've done both the analysis, and the software will be handed over to Jen with training.
Okay.
So you will have the model to update.
Okay, and then further on it says establishing a continuing cost control system. So that's something that is part of what you've provided for us?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's the only question I have for you. Thank you. So I spent quite a bit of time reading this. I have a question for our city attorney. Maybe you can help me out with the personal choice services versus community-supported services. And I read this report several times. That explains it pretty well, and that seems pretty black and white to me. And yet when we get into the lists of different things, there's a little exception here, there's a little exception there, and I left feeling not clear about what a personal choice service is and isn't.
Sure. It's a good question, Councilman Heller. Really, there isn't a legal definition for that per se. The big global issue here is whether or not the city is going to seek full cost recovery for services being provided when the public comes forward and asks for a service. What is put into community service versus personal service? A lot of them seem obvious, and then some that might be in the gray ultimately would be a policy choice on how it would be characterized.
Okay, thank you. Any other, let's see here, what else? Can you explain the cost reasonably borne test that implies taxes are to be used to finance governmental activities which are humanely and properly not financed by taxes? I don't understand that, to be blunt.
Well, there's various methodologies for determining what meets the cost recovery requirement. That's just simply one that is spread about through the operations, I believe, of City Hall. Finance director might be able to address that methodology better, but the basic idea here is that the city can legally recover its costs of providing services when there's fees involved or permits and whatnot. And how you calculate that often is not just, a one-to-one ratio. If you have one person doing one thing, it often can be a lot of staff members involved in processing, reviewing, finalizing some internal City Hall activity, if that helps.
It does. The other part of that, when I look at the costs between the different cities for the same service, and some of them vary widely, is this where this cost reasonably borne test applies, or is that something else completely different?
That exact methodology, I think, would probably be better answered by a finance director or our consultant. But okay. I can attest to that, of course, from city to city, there will be different direct costs for providing specific services, just depending upon staffing levels, expertise levels, workload, et cetera.
Right. Okay. That is all the questions I have.
Thank you, Councilmember McPherson.
Thank you. And thank you very much. I had an opportunity to meet with Scott and Jen and had some of my questions answered, but let me just ask a couple more. First of all, I noticed that the list of proposed fees that you included in the packet did not include all of the fees. There were no recreation services included, and I'm just wondering, when we meet again, we are going to be talking about all of the fees. Is that correct?
Yes, all of the fees they're part of the link that was provided in the staff report, and it goes through all of the fees. We pulled out some of the recreation ones for purposes of facility rentals, and then the comparison to the other cities that was provided.
But it would be this great big list that we originally had of all of the fees that we're going to be talking about when we actually do something here.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to verify that. And I am the one that asked the question, and thank you very much for producing the information. I was very concerned about the fact that in developing property or developing houses, many fees apply, not just one. And so I was curious to know what would be the overall financial impact of all of the fees, and I do appreciate that you have now provided this. And I don't know, maybe I could just suggest just a couple of the examples that I asked about. How about a single-family home of value over $300,000, and the increase in total fees would be $12,800. And this is a single-family home under $30,000, and the increase is $9,074. And this is commercial, a new commercial property. The total increase with all of the fees that apply would be $35,406, and I appreciate that information because one of my, I'll get
Is there a question?
Yes, I do have a question. And I'm going to phrase it as a question. I don't see in the discussion the trade-offs involved in the proposed fees. So many of the personal choice fees actually have community impacts. And certainly that's the case with all of the development fees, because obviously if you add that much cost to a house, that house is going to cost more. So it's going to both discourage possibly a building, but it's also going to work against our goal of more low-cost housing. So the same is true with some of the fees that we apply to some of these events. There is a community benefit, even though it's a personal choice, to have it. And that's certainly also true with some of the recreation fees, where we get community benefit if the kids are occupied and not running around the streets. So I'm concerned that in our discussion, we include those. So we talk about what those trade-offs are. So you have indicated that these fees would go into effect in January, and then don't we normally consider fees again for the next fiscal year? So 6 months later, would we be considering fees again?
So we typically adopt fees starting July 1. We did not this year. We just extended the previous fee schedule, so there was no cost of living increase or COLA increase, CPI increase, sorry, that we did this year. So if council agreed and we did a January 1 increase, we would be back again March timeframe for a July 1 increase. There would likely not be a significant change other than CPI at that point, because we wouldn't probably have a lot of additional data or process changes.
Unless we were phasing them in.
Unless we were phasing in, correct.
Okay. And I just am curious to ask, would it be possible, I have been somewhat of a critic of the research methodology that's used to derive the actual cost, because it's basically relying on opinions, what staff can remember, how much time they spent on various things. So I'm just curious, would it be possible to try to kind of test these numbers by maybe taking 2 or 3 common activities and actually asking employees to keep track of their time, so we could see how it compares to what this data shows?
Certainly we could do that. It would take months. That's how long projects take to process. It's not something that could happen right now, because an application comes in, it's routed throughout the departments, they have to review them. Like say a new single-family house that's going to Planning Commission. That application comes in, is taken in by staff at the front counter, so time is allocated there, and then it's distributed to all the departments that would provide conditions for that project. So Public Works, Fire, Building, and we'll get those comments back. And then if there's any inconsistencies with city policy, we give them a letter, say your application's incomplete, here's your punch list of things you need to correct, and they have to revise plans. So that process takes months. And so in the building process is the same way. You come in, they submit a set of plans, it gets routed out for everybody to review. There's a punch list generated and returned to the applicant, and then they have to go revise construction documents, which take longer than architectural documents that would be for a planning permit, and then resubmit, and they have to go through that process again. So again, you're talking months.
What about with some of the more straightforward processes, like, let's say, business licenses? I'm just thinking there must be some that happen fairly frequently that we could just see how long does it actually take if they keep track, just to make a comparison on maybe 1 or 2 or 3 possibly.
So one of the challenges is that even with business license, which seems to be, a pretty straightforward thing, one person can come in and they've done it year after year, and they have everything together and hand us the application and the check, or the renewal and the check, and we get it in the system, 15 minutes, it's done. Somebody else comes in and they don't have everything they need, or they have a lot of questions, and that one might take 30 minutes of communication back and forth, and then they leave and they come back another day with everything that they need to do that. We're working on averages, and as part of the process of doing this, the consultant met with all of the employees that do all these processes and accounted for 100% of their time. So they couldn't say in one discussion, oh, it takes me, 30 hours to do a business license a week. And then when you're asked, okay, what you also take in TOT, that takes me 20 hours. Well, now you're over your 40 hours a week. So we work back and redefine, really how many hours is it taking you. Plus, this happened over several months. So from the original conversation versus when the end results came back, we kept refining those numbers as we were working through the process. So I'm not going to say we can't do it, but I'm not sure. I don't believe we'd get drastically different results.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask. And I know that the Harbor Board, since I actually sat there and listened to them go through the 33 fees that affect Harbor, went fee by fee. I'm assuming the Planning Commission did not do that with the development fees.
I did not run them through the Planning Commission, no.
No. Would there be any value in doing that, do you think?
I doubt it. It's really, our fees are based on cost recovery, so it's the amount of time we're spending processing the applications. Planning Commission doesn't have a lot to say about that, unless you're interested in their input as it relates to some of the issues that you raised this evening, and that is, does your Planning Commission feel that there's a detrimental effect on, applicants coming forward if the fees are raised? That's a legitimate question that you're asking. I think that's something the Planning Commission could weigh in on, but the fees themselves, no, I don't.
Right. Well, and I was actually thinking about understanding the full magnitude of if you were to pursue full cost recovery, what is their opinion of how this might impact development and the cost of housing and how it might change the community if we add that much to the cost of a house. I realize we're on a tight timetable here, but if there was any way to have them provide some input, it would be helpful, I would think. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. I have one question. When is it financially prudent for a city facing long-term financial deficits to offer significant subsidies or provide a large number of services below cost?
Is that a question?
Who's going to answer that? Is that a question?
Yeah.
It is a question.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a time where you would wholesale want to, without serious discussion about the trade-offs, as was mentioned earlier, to wave the magic wand and set fees below full cost recovery. But there absolutely are instances, even in those situations, where it may be important community values on the line where you maintain subsidies.
Perhaps would that be in situations where you determine that the subsidy has a significant return on investment, as you mentioned previously, with certain not-for-profit agencies or entities that bring tourism to the community, et cetera? Would that be an example where actually there is an ROI that's beyond the subsidy?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have. With that, I will open up public comment. We are on item C-1. I do have a number of speaker slips, so I will start out with Mr. Steve Powers. Steve, welcome.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I appreciate your time. I am Steve Powers, Art Show Director for Morro Bay Art in the Park, and I have been in that role for the past 4 years. I have 45 years of experience in that business, and we have improved the show considerably over the last 4 years and increased attendance and people coming to Morro Bay for that event, which is coming up to its 65th annual event. The major Morro Bay events are about 6 or 7. The Amgen Tour, as was mentioned earlier, which gets about a $55,000 grant from county and city of Morro Bay for Amgen to be here. Amgen is owned by AEG, which is Philip Anschutz. AEG is an $11 billion company. Philip Anschutz owns Staples Center. And this Amgen tour does bring some notoriety to cities that host it, but I don't know if it's actually worth the money put out, and that has been established from many communities, so I will let Amgen go by the wayside. The Avocado and Margarita Festival get a grant of $5,000 for that event. The Harbor Festival gets a grant of about $5,000 for that event. The Cruisin' Morro Bay Car Show gets a $5,000 grant. The Morro Bay Art in the Park, which is presented by the Morro Bay Art Association, a nonprofit, has never asked for grants from the city, and we have presented the show on our own by self-funding. So the Morro Bay Art in the Park show fees, when I took over management of the show directly as art director, were $1,000 for the weekend for one of the events, and we do 3 events. That increased the following year up to about $1,300. The consultant from Fullerton has recommended that the $30 application fee for Art in the Park be increased to $345, which is over 1,000%. The $533 special event fee has stayed the same. The $480 per day park fee has increased to $1,900 for an event, and our loading encroachment fees will increase. So going to the future, our Art in the Park fees, as proposed by the consultant, would be $3,242 per event, an increase of 150%.
Thank you. And we do have a handout. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Next up for public comment is Erica Crawford, Chamber CEO. Welcome back, Erica.
Thanks for having me back. I'm just going to stick to the script because this is a very interesting conversation, and I'm really here to listen. The Chamber has provided some solid input, I think, via agenda correspondence, so I don't want to take from that. But I'd just first like to thank the city staff for including our letter and the policy framework in with the council agenda packet for tonight. Our organization spent some real time with the study and provided our input with great care on behalf of our members. A quick thank you to City Manager Collins and City Finance Director Jen Calloway for attending 2 of our Governmental Affairs Committee meetings to discuss both this topic and just a larger umbrella of revenue enhancement for the city. As outlined in our policy framework document, the Chamber's review concluded that there are some what we consider to be necessary modifications that we encourage the council to consider tonight as you provide direction to staff. So mostly just here to listen. Thank you.
Great, and thank you for the input from your committee. We appreciate that. Next up on item C1 is Cynthia Bunting. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you so much. I'm a little short, so I'll have to stand over here. But please be patient with me. This is my first time ever public speaking.
Take your time, relax.
Okay. Well, what I want to talk about tonight is because I'm here as a mom, a grandma, and a great-grandma. And this Art in the Park, which I'm part of the Morro Bay Art Association, I've just became part of the youth department. And I want to talk about the ripple effect because, like I said, I've always lived in small towns, except one wondrous year I got to live in Long Beach for a year. And I've seen what the effects happen, like when the fees go up, like he was just discussing. Because I did live in a tiny town that had 4,000 people, 400 people in the kids in the high school. And when we could not get parks built, we couldn't get events. We didn't have any place to hold event. We had to go to the big city to hold an event, even for family events. And it was so devastating to our community. And in 1 year, and I'm getting a little emotional because I had to help children with this. We had 13 girls at that school in 1 year end up pregnant because boredom, pure boredom, and somebody, oh, it's just bad parenting. No, they had no place to go. We didn't have any place to skateboard. Unless it was winter, you did nothing. You went to the woods. You did things. And what I see or feel that might happen is when these fees go up this much, the moms and dads that have 2 or 3 jobs, which they do in this community, because they're budgeting for food right now. and their money has a budget, a tight budget, and then they have to take and go, oh, well, I want to go to Art in the Park. And now, you know, it's costing them, and eventually they're going to have to put more money out, which takes away from our children's programs. So basically, you're in a roundabout way, that little ripple and I know fees have to go up. They all do. The electric bill goes up. Your grocery bill goes up. Everything goes up. And we understand that. But when it goes up 1,000% or 50%, it hurts the community. Because communities, these people that are parents, are going to have to take their business to someplace else instead of being here. Instead of going to Art in the Park or going to the Harbor Festival, you know, because so many people are dropping out doing it because they can't afford it, they're going to take their kids to SLO. They're going to take them to the Strawberry Festival. They're going to take them other places. And that takes money out of our community, you know, and it affects our children. And that's why I'm here. I don't want to see what, you know, Morro Bay go through what I've seen in a couple other little towns that I've lived through. You know, it's devastating for the children. You know, and the parents, when they're working 2 jobs, and that, whatever it is, Harbor Festival, Art in the Park, whatever it is, that could be their second job, you know, and they're out there and their kids are home alone. And what do they have to do while mom and dad are there? You know, we need to keep funding like the skate parks, the bike parks, things like this. And when all these fees goes up, the parents can't help chip in for that.
Thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate it. You did well. Next up for public comment is Patricia Newton. Welcome, Patricia.
Hi, good evening. Mr. Mayor, City Council, Scott Collins, Jennifer Callaway, city staff, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm the president of the Morro Bay Art Association. Of course, I think everyone knows by now we're a nonprofit organization that gives a lot to the community here. We give classes for children, adults, workshops, educational excursions, internships, and scholarships right here to the local community. This fee study has really got us worried because when you go from around $3,000 to $10,000 almost, $9,700 and some change, it really is impactful. The harm isn't just coming to us, but it also impacts the community. So I hope that when you are discussing this fee agenda, please think about all the impacts that it will have, not just on our organization, Art in the Park, but other nonprofits as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. And next up for public comment is Tim. Tim, I'm going to try. Is it Gleason or Gleason? Clee.
I've worked with.
Yes, thank you.
I've worked with the city for over 30 years on many projects, and I really appreciate the staff. I think that this is a great place to be. And you know, I live in San Luis, but I just recently bought a property, an old building on Main Street, North Main Street. I don't see a lot of other people doing things like that are coming up here, and I'm kind of surprised because it's such a great place. But then we're putting together our plans, 7 units, bed and breakfast, boutique hotel, something like that, and boom, we see this instant fee increase. And I don't think that the staff doesn't deserve what they get. They deserve for the services they render. Personally, when they say it's a personal choice service, I think it's a personal mandated service. I don't have a choice. I pay the fees. And so the services are beneficial in many ways, and it helps the city to incorporate new developments into the design framework that they want and the services that they need. Mine is going to be providing TOT ultimately if it works, you know, but when I calculated the fee increase, it's 2 to 3 times what it would be prior to the change. It's extreme. And it seems like we can phase it in. I think that's a reasonable idea. I think realizing that there is public benefit to these things. I really appreciated Councilwoman McPherson's questions. Those are the questions that I would ask. I guess I want you to understand that this does impact, and I'm just a local yokel. I've lived in San Luis Obispo for over 30 years in this area and worked for the city of Morro Bay for over 30 years. So I'm looking forward to doing something with my kids to do this tourist facilities, visiting facilities. That will be very nice. But I just ask that you give some serious consideration to the fact that you're going to impact things that will ultimately have a benefit to the city. And I thank you for that.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. And that's the last speaker slip I have. I will leave public comment open. Betty, welcome.
Good evening. No questions this time, only comments. I know that it's difficult to do these fee studies, having been through it myself, and the question is always, how much do taxes pay for? How much more do you add on in terms of fees? And that balance is really difficult. And so I would like to add to that difficulty by speaking to the $250 fee that wants to be raised to $875 for an appeal process. That's more than three times, increasing that. As other speakers have said, other things are increasing dramatically. What I think makes this one different, and you received my email about it, is that this is really about public involvement, and it's about our right to be involved in government decision-making. And the Chamber rightly called it the chilling effect, which we have always talked about. And other councils who have faced these same decisions have always come down on the side of First Amendment. We would rather have people involved at a reasonable rate than exclude them from the process of being able to comment on their government, and that's what an appeal fee is. Requiring that kind of money in this town is really literally half of somebody's rent, and to ask them to put over half their rent just so they can tell you about an event or a project that doesn't fit is really unreasonable. So I would ask you to direct staff to leave it as it is. It's different from any other fee that we have because it's about the people participating. It's not about an event or a renting property or a renting city stuff outside. And then I would like to just for a minute comment on the Chamber's input on this. And I think the Chamber absolutely should be commenting, particularly on business items with regard to fees. However, when they start talking about appeals, I don't know where that comes from because I've not seen them at any of those appeals. I've been on both sides where I've talked for appeals and against appeals, and I've done it over the years, as you know. So I feel pretty confident that I know that this is not a decision that people make easily. It's $250, and you have to really believe in what you're doing to come up with that kind of money. And so for most of us, that's already a high enough fee. So to raise it literally almost just below $1,000 is very unreasonable to allow your public to continue to be involved. So I would encourage you to go with the $250, keep it as it is, as other councils have over the years, even as we've raised other fees. And then to make my last comment then about let us always be involved with this. Don't give us an LCP that's going to reduce our right to public input.
Thank you, Betty. Public comment is still open. Any members of the public who haven't come forward? Looking around, seeing none, I will close public comment. And before we move into discussion, we'll take a 3.5-minute biofluid break. Okay, good evening. We are, excuse me, we are back. We are on item C-1, and we had just closed public comment, and we're bringing it back to council. I will open us up with this discussion and then pass it to my colleagues for input as well. I thought about this in some great detail as a city and likened it to a business. And I picked, I could pick any business, but I picked Albertsons because it's an easy pick, large store, lots of products, so forth and so on. And I realize when I walk into the store, the expectation that I have is that there is going to be various components associated with the price for which I pay for a product. Usually that would be comprised of the cost of goods sold, or the raw cost of the product itself, including the container that it comes in. And then there would be allocated fees, because Albertsons is in the business of not just cost recovery, but they're in the profit-making business. And so they would allocate their costs for electricity and utilities and labor, et cetera, to products as well. And they would put that product mix together. And if it came out to be a negative number, they would raise their prices, but they would also look at competitors to make sure that their prices were competitive, because that would be very important to them. However, I also know that they have these products called loss leaders. And these are products that are in the store that are available at prices that are usually less than cost. And they're placed very strategically in the store to get you to move through other products that they want you to buy. And those loss leaders are subsidized products that they provide to the consumer in order to get a return on investment somewhere else. And that's just a pure business model, very simple, and I think just a general example. And the city, in my opinion, is similar. We provide services to the community, and if we continue to provide services to the community that are fully subsidized or significantly subsidized and significantly below cost and don't allow us to recoup the cost of services, how will we ever fund increases in labor, increases in utility costs, maintain parks, operate a police department, a fire department, buy new engines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? However, within the city, I also do believe that there are loss leaders, or items that should be, quote unquote, and I'll use the term subsidized or potentially discounted, because they provide a significant return on investment to the city. And those are numerous events that we have and we have identified through policy development in the past. And so with that example, we are a city economically facing a disastrous, and I say a disastrous, 10-year forecast, mainly because of unfunded CalPERS liability. And you'll hear me talk about that over and over and over again. And also, in my opinion, we have suffered from the inability to consider raising not only fees, but recovering full costs in many areas of this city over the years, and it's now catching up with this. We don't have a significant opportunity right now to broadly increase our economic base, that is, diversify our economy, because it is tourism. And we are working on a significant number of efforts to improve that will not produce fruit for a somewhat long period of time. There's an immediate need to, in my mind, be fair and be able to fund the future. However, but also to provide for what I'll call lower costs or lesser than cost recovery for items that produce a return on investment. My summary for input for the staff is as follows, and then I'll open it up to my colleagues. I support full cost recovery whenever possible with routine updates for the city in order to maintain cost recovery for services provided. I agree with staff's recommendation to consider beginning the implementation of the new fees on January of 2020. However, I do believe the system should allow for a phasing in, especially for fees that have been increased significantly, in order to be fair to the consumer out there or those that are utilizing services such that they're not hit all at once with large increases. I would like to see staff bring back recommendations on fee subsidies for organizations based upon their status, such as not-for-profit, providing significant community benefit, or city-sponsored events. But I think, in my opinion, they should fall under the purview of the existing policy that we have developed, the partnership agreements, or not receive said subsidy. I continue to support our partnership agreements that have been developed and believe that entities are not covered by those should participate through that vehicle. I support city-sponsored event fee waivers for events that have been determined and recommended to the City Council for such fee waiver. Examples, as mentioned in the staff report, might include Amgen, although that comes to us annually for a review of that, but that's an example of such an event. Other festivals that produce large increases in tourism, et cetera. I support the elimination of the direct cost method that has been outlined. I think it's an anomaly. It should be eliminated. I support bringing back the issue of liveaboard after recommendations and slip fees after recommendations are received from those that haven't been able to participate in giving public input. And I personally want to thank the Chamber of Commerce, the Harbor Advisory Board, the citizens that provided input via poll call, and those of you who are here tonight for public comment who have given us input. I sincerely appreciate that. We have reviewed that input in addition to public comment here tonight. And lastly, I want to thank our consultants for the good work that they do that is not dissimilar to what is done by other agencies exactly like theirs, almost the same methodology, although not statistically significant, as valid can get given the current methods we have for doing this across the board with cities. I've done some benchmarking, found that not only does our current consultant do it using the methods they have utilized, but other companies do very similar methodology when they review these cost subsidies. My summary is that we are in a world of hurt financially as a city. However, there are some loss leader opportunities that I've outlined that I think are important for the city. And unless staff, and I've not heard it from any staff member, thinks that any individual fee will result in the loss of potential revenue to the city, or such as development, and would negatively impact that. We asked previously, and I believe the answer to that is we've reviewed that, and we do not believe that those impacts would occur. That is my summary and my input. Thank you. I'll turn to my far right over here. Councilmember Heller, sir.
I'm not quite ready.
Thank you. I'll turn to my far left. Councilmember Addis, would you like to, or would you like to volunteer?
Well, if someone's ready, but I'm ready if they're not ready.
Great. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to go down my list. So yes to moving the public hearing to October 24th. I do appreciate the idea of the fees going into effect January 1, 2020, and honoring the current rates for those who have scheduled before that. I do think the harbor-related fees, particularly liveaboard and dock rental fees, should come back to council November, December. I would like to bring those organizations into the partnership agreements, such as the Lions Club and others that are not paying fees because of their partnership with Morro Bay. I would like to continue a benefit for nonprofits. And I am interested in a small subsidy for events with significant economic input. I think it makes sense to use a similar model to the T-bid to decide what significant economic impact is, so that those organizations don't have to go through two separate processes to figure out if they're going to get support from T-bid, and a separate process for support from the city. I am very interested in a % of revenue to economic development, specifically to improve services. And when I want to thank the Chamber Board and the Government Affairs Committee. And when I first read the suggestion that Morro Bay shouldn't outpace the county average in terms of our fees, I thought that made sense. But I'm rethinking that a little bit. If our increased fees would improve our services. And I think there's a balance between a prospective customer's frustration around cost and frustration around service. And I think it's okay to raise cost if we can improve our service. I wouldn't really want to see the kind of time accounting that I think Scott Graham was asked about, like getting employees to do their time accounting, only because I've had experience with that, and it's so time consuming that it often takes away time from service to the public to do that kind of accounting, and I do trust our consultant on that. Appeal fees, I do think they should be increased slightly, but I am very sensitive to the idea of raising them so high that people cannot participate. And I wouldn't want to do that, but I do think across the board, Morro Bay is suffering financially, and I don't think we should leave any fees unturned, really. Senior and children's programming, I would like to see those continue to have a subsidy. Primarily because Morro Bay is a place that people come to recreate, and I think it's one of our biggest assets, and so we want to help our communities be able to recreate. And then I agree with a phase-in, especially for those fees that are going up significantly, but I don't want a 10-year phase-in. I don't think that's going to help us. So I'd rather have a 3-year phase-in, or a shorter phase-in that feels reasonable, but still allows us to benefit from the fee increase. And then on the Polco, I want to thank the public who gave feedback on Polco, and one of the comments was that they felt somebody felt it was hard to find information about fees, and so I would like to see updates or whatever we need to do to make that easier for people. And I want to thank the Chamber for recognizing that employee salaries in Morro Bay really suffer. And I just think that across the board, we need to be considering and remembering that our employee salaries are extremely low and be thinking about how we might address that moving forward. And I think that was it.
Thank you very much. I'll just, since I'm not going to call on anybody who'd like to go next.
It's so complicated.
I got in trouble last time for doing that, so. Yeah, okay. Councilmember Davis, thank you.
Yes, thank you. First, I think it's important that the city recover its costs for providing discretionary services. I think the development fees should be charged at full cost recovery, and I am impressed that our consultant and our community development director, who both have years of experience dealing with developers and fees, find no correlation between the fee cost recovery and the willingness of developers to do business in a particular city. I agree with the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee, and thank the Chamber, that we don't know what the full cost of services will be once our general plan, local coastal program, and zoning ordinance are put into place. So I would phase in development fee increases at 25% per year until we have new figures. Right now, with our current general plan, processing permits is laborious and time-consuming. And I am also sensitive that if we charge the full increase at this time, we're sending out a contradictory message to businesses and developers to say, yes, Morro Bay is open for business, but we're more expensive and slower than anybody else. I also agree with the Chamber that for fees that are not assessed at full recovery, we should identify the source of funds that subsidize the services. That's a matter of transparency that we owe to the residents and taxpayers of Morro Bay. And I'd like to see that as a separate budget line item so that it's readily available for everyone to see. I'm curious about the council policy of 25% recovery of appeal fees. I would like to see that policy. If, in fact, that is the council's policy, we should either follow it or change it. If it is, if we're going to maintain the policy of 25%, then I would support $875. And I agree with the proposed fee schedule for providing recreation services. I favor subsidizing recreation services so that everyone can participate. As to facility and special event fees, I look at those as two separate categories. One is partnerships and the other is subsidies. I like the idea of partnerships for services that the city would do if it had the resources, such as Morro Bay and Bloom and Morro Bay Open Space Alliance. I also favor partnerships for things that make the city a better place to live, such as Project Surf Camp, Pacific Wildlife Care, Community Foundation, Community Radio, Lions Club, and the community dinners, because these are all services that enhance our quality of life. For subsidies, I support subsidies as presented for local residents and nonprofits who provide local events to city residents, such as the Whitecaps Band. I would not assess fees for city-sponsored events such as the Amgen Tour of California, July 4th Family Day, Halloween Parade, or Kite Festival, because that's just an accounting transfer. And I agree with staff recommendation that subsidies should not exceed 50%. I do not favor subsidizing for-profit organizations that use city resources. They should pay the full freight. To answer staff's question about how to handle the large events that provide significant economic benefits, such as the Avocado Margarita Festival, the Car Show, Harbor Festival, Art in the Park, Winter Bird Festival, Writers Conference, I think we already have a mechanism for that. TBID makes grants to organizations that support TBID's mission to promote overnight stays in Morro Bay. I'm not in favor of granting additional subsidies for these events. I attend TBID meetings, and I know that all of these organizations apply every year for grants. The TBID board is very thoughtful about analyzing the economic benefit of each event, using their term, heads and beds, as a criterion. And they subsidize events on the basis of their ability to generate economic benefits. I trust that process to work, and I don't think we need to add fee waivers as additional subsidies. As for the Economic Development Incentive Fund, I would prefer to hold discussion on that until our next budget cycle, when we can have a more thoughtful look at the impact on our total budget. And I agree with staff recommendation to discontinue the direct cost subsidies. So.
Thank you. Well stated. And I'll flip a coin.
Sure.
Sure.
I'll go.
Councilmember Heller, thank you.
Okay, I think I'm ready. So I spent a lot of time looking at this report. I liked it very much because I actually kind of sort of understood it. It looks to me in Chapter 3, it summarizes the costs, the value of the costs, the full business costs that we provide in the city is over $8 million. The fees that we charge to pay for those costs is about half of that, about $4 million. So basically, we are subsidizing half, 50% of all the services we provide. Will Rogers is famous for the quotation, "If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging." I can say that Morro Bay is in a financial hole that is a result of many years of not really paying close attention to where our money goes. The positive side of that is we've got a very generous community with lots of volunteers, a lot of great events going on. The downside is this city, I think, will cease to exist until we start thinking a little bit more business-like, a little bit more like an Albertsons, if you will. 9 service centers were identified in the consultant's report, and 3 of them account for 87% of the subsidies. And the biggest one is the rec department at a delta between services provided and fees charged of $2.2 million a year. Harbor department is second at a little over $700,000 a year. Community development is third at $629,000 a year. Those 3 service centers account for 87% of subsidies. As much as I love recreation and all the great things it does for our community, I think we've got to make some major changes in that department. Frankly, I don't use the rec department, and personally, I don't want to pay for someone to play tennis if I'm paying for half of their event. Harbor department is getting back to us, which is good. I think that's very appropriate. They might need a little more time. Community development, I support the fees that are proposed in the consultant's report completely. I don't believe in phasing them in because, in my experience, phasing in increases tends to stimulate development rather than damper it. And I'm kind of a guy like, hey, development's going just fine here. I really don't want it to go much faster. And if it goes a little slower, I'm okay with that. I think if we phase in those fees, development will accelerate through that period. And then when we get to the final point, it'll drop off fairly drastically. So I would not want to do that. I like the lost leader concept that our mayor discussed. I think we are going to have some lost leaders. Maybe they're in the rec department, but I think we have to be extremely careful to not slide back into the position that we're in right now. We have no guarantee. We're going to try and put something on the ballot in 2020 to increase the sales tax rate. There is no guarantee that that will pass. we need to shore up our finances now, and the best way we can do it is take a full cost recovery approach. And it might change some things in town, but it's either that or I really don't think we'll be around in 5 years. So it's a tough choice. As far as subsidizing events, I don't know. And I don't know if these big events pay the police and fire for their services. If they pay for the portable toilets, I guess they do. I'm not in favor of subsidizing any of the large events. I think they need to be run in a way that they can support themselves. I don't go to the major events, which I've told a number of people and look at me kind of funny. But I don't go to the major events. I don't want to subsidize them. As far as the grants, I agree with Councilmember Davis. I think we give grants here and there to kind of keep some things going. I think we have, I'll be honest, I think we have too many nonprofits in this town. I'd rather have fewer that are stronger financially instead of we're just kind of keeping a whole bunch of little boats afloat. And I'm not sure that that's sustainable or a good policy. Amgen, again, I'm not sure how I feel about Amgen. But that pretty much wraps up how I feel about this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember McPherson.
Okay. It's always hard to go last. First of all, I want to thank the staff for all of the public outreach efforts. I attended one of them, and I participated in the Harbor Advisory Board, so I know you've made a great effort to reach out to the community, and I want to thank all those people who came and participated. And also, I really did appreciate the Chamber of Commerce Governmental Affairs Committee. It was obvious that you did a lot of homework and thought hard about the issues and came up with a policy framework for us to consider that I thought was thoughtful and comprehensive. So I hope we take that into account in our recommendations. I am very aware of the need to raise revenues. I think we all understand that. But I am concerned that we balance fee increases with the possible negative consequences of them, and also the trade-offs that we're giving up. And we really need to be aware of them in every single fee increase that we're looking at. So just to answer your questions, should we recommend any fees be lower than cost recovery? I think we've all suggested there are some that need to be. I know that we already have in place some policies about fee recovery. I think it's 100% for some departments, but for some it's different. It's 85% or less. We need to go back and look at what we currently have in place as policy for fee recovery and make sure that our recommendations that come forward fit into that, or that we change those policies if so. I am especially concerned about development fees. They are large ticket items, and many of them could double, some as high as 6 times. And as you can see, they are clearly going to add to the cost of housing in Morro Bay, which is already high. And the character of Morro Bay is changing in part because of the price of our homes. So I am concerned about them. I agree with the Chamber policy that we need to make our development process more efficient before we double or triple our development fees, because it begs the question, if we have a cumbersome process that takes a lot of time, why should we raise fees to cover it? We need to at least simultaneously be working on improving the process and then assessing how much the actual cost of the process is. As to the Economic Development Fund, I think I would like to hear more about that. I assumed that was probably in there to maybe deal with the affordable housing issue as a way to offset development fees, but I think I would like to postpone that discussion until, I think somebody suggested, our next budget discussion. I do support a phase-in of fee increase. And I have a possible approach to suggest to the council as a way to phase them in, because I don't think it's fair to suddenly double, triple, 1,000 times one fee was mentioned. That's the fee increase. So here I'm going to just read what I am proposing that we consider as a phase-in approach. If the proposed new fee, i.e. the actual cost, is less than 25% more than the current fee, apply the full fee recovery amount this year, so before, and I do support the fee increase going in effect on January 1st. If the proposed new fee is between 25 to 50% more than the current fee, raise the fees by 50% this year and possibly 50% the next year. If the proposed new fee is between 51 to 99% more than the current fee, raise the fees by 33% this year, and then consider another phase-in. If the proposed new fee is 100% or more of the current fee, in other words, more than double, raise the fees by 25% this year, which would suggest if we wanted to continue to full cost recovery, that would take 4 years to get there. I don't believe we should reduce any fees based on this study because they're just not reliable enough to justify fee reductions. I think we should review all the fees again for next year to determine the impact of the new fee structure, whether positively or negatively, and whether process efficiencies have been implemented to justify lowering the full cost recovery amount for the development fees. With respect to the rental and events fees, I support the idea of any ones that want to receive a subsidy and can justify a subsidy we should cover under the partnership policy. I disagree with my colleagues who want to give the money through the granting process so that then that festival can turn around and pay the fees back to the Recreation Department as fees. It's just a lot of unnecessary work. I would rather waive fees instead of giving a grant, especially to established festivals. The original TBID grant was intended to help new festivals get started, not to subsidize continuing ones. And I agree with all of the recommendations about holding off on the harbor, the docking, and the liveaboard fees. And I would add to that the vacation rental fee, because I believe that when we put in place a new process, there may be additional costs associated that we want to incorporate in the permit process. So I think I hit most of them.
Okay, thank you. Did you have an addition?
One
Yes,
more thing
sure.
I forgot to mention.
Sure.
I would like the appeal fee to stay at $250.
I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
I would like the appeal fee
Oh.
to stay where it is. And also in terms of the community development fees, I see that as a way that we can incentivize perhaps the kind of housing that we want by offering reductions in some of those fees to get workforce housing and other things built. So,
Say that last one again, Jeff. Sorry.
I think
About the housing.
we could use those fees to negotiate the kind of housing that we want built in town by offering reductions for certain trade-offs. So.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, staff, now it's your turn. Now, I'm going to try to summarize this, and there's not consensus. That's okay. You just asked for input, but I'm going to just try to give you my sense of common ground. Everybody recognizes the economic issues associated with the city. Each council member agrees that fees should be increased differently across the board, but phasing in is supported. Some significant methodology. I believe one dissenting, do it immediately, but the majority, it seemed like, phase it in with some kind of phased-in methodology. No support for economic development at this time. However, bring it back for further consideration once it's flushed out further. look at current policies and review those for cost subsidies. And if there are changes that need to be made, they should come to council and/or reviewed at council so that we know what they are. There are varying opinions about grants from TBID versus partnership fees, and the consensus is we have a lot of not-for-profits, a lot of entities that do get subsidies. They need to fall under some agreement that is currently in place, and there should be a return on investment noted so that we can evaluate the subsidy, I guess, is the best way I can say it. With regard to recreation, differing opinions. Some want major changes, others support some level of subsidy for that, so I'll let you interpret that as you bring that back. There's support for the methodology from our consultant, generally across the board almost, and there's a sense of confidence and trust in that given the current report that we have. The appeals fees, there's not uniform support for increasing those to the recommended level. However, there's agreement that there should be some level of subsidy less than the current recommendation, and I'll let you grapple with that because it was all over the board. Holding off on the harbor discussion until we get their input. That was uniform agreement across the board. Review annually, or at least next year, I think was a common theme to determine the impact on the increase in fees, and also look at process improvement that has been made as a result of that, and that might give further reference to changing fees if indeed there were process improvements noted. Let's see. Nobody supports the current, what's that unusual methodology that we have? I had it down in my notes, but I lost it. What was it called? Direct cost? Yeah, the direct cost. Eliminate that basic subsidy from the current process. And fees for city-sponsored events. There was the majority felt that if there was justification that we should do that. There were some dissenting comments made with regard to that. Let me see if I'm missing anything. Guys, feel free to help me. I'm just trying to get the common areas. Partnership policy, no grants, hold off on harbor. And I think that's pretty much kind of the common ground that I could see. And I'll give it back to staff for what more you'd like to hear from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good summary. And we understand this isn't an easy one to come down on a consensus basis, but just to put it back in your court one more time, the meeting would be the 22nd of October. You would have to nail that in. You'd have to agree on the fees in order to launch Jan 1. If we go into the next meeting, because there's prolonged conversation, then we'll miss Jan 1. Just something to factor in. So it may be helpful for council to get consensus around how many years you want to phase in, to give staff a starting point, because we're going to give you something, and if it's nowhere near consensus, then we're not going to complete the discussion.
You like more clarity on that?
Yeah. How long do you want to prolong the phase?
Personally, 1 year for me. I'll just say it, and I'll let others comment.
I'm fine with 1, no more than 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with 1.
I would say up to 3. I really do think that the magnitude of the increase should be taken into account and phased in over a longer period of time. So I think some of them can go in effect immediately, and others should just take maybe another year or up to 3.
Can I add to mine? Sorry. You go and then
Let him
I'll
go
add.
and I'll come back to you.
No, you can add.
Go ahead, Councilmember Hiller.
I think we need to stop digging the hole 1 year.
Okay, so.
I'm just going to say on if it's a longer than 1 year that a dollar amount rather than a percentage is important to me. I mean, I think a $12 fee going up to $24 in a year is fine. I think a $500 fee going up to $1,500 in 1 year could be challenging. So it's those kinds of like huge dollar amounts that I would want to see phased in that isn't necessarily a percentage increase, but it's a massive magnitude increase that I would see maybe if we can't agree to 3 years, maybe 2 years on some of these. You know, if they're going up 1,000%, I can't do the math on that, but from $1 to $100, like I would want to see that over time, right? That's
Yeah, so maybe I could summarize because I think, and here's what I think I hear. If the magnitude is extreme, potentially 2 years. If it's not extreme, 1 year.
And when we say 1 year, that means go into effect full freight.
Right.
January 1. Well, so there's no phase-in. That is just.
Well, that's still beginning in January 2020. Yeah.
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing?
That we want to make sure when we say phase in over 1 year, do you mean starting January 1st, 2020, it will be the full amount? Or are you saying phase it in, you do 50% January 1, 2020?
Okay, I started, so I'll rephrase what I meant, and then I'll allow everybody else to restate what they meant. I meant with regard to a 1 year phase-in, beginning in January 2020, to raise fees a certain percent, and then
the rest
somewhere about halfway down the line, the remainder of the percentage, except with the discussion we've had for those that have large magnitude increases, consider that to be a 2 year step increase.
And by 2 years, do we mean 3 years?
6 months, 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. I'm just making that up.
I think by 2 years, we do mean 3 years.
Okay. I don't think we do.
By 1 year, we mean 2 years.
No.
Don does, but.
No, you do.
Can I offer?
Yes, you can.
Okay,
Thank you, Jen.
January 1, we're saying would be the first year, if you will, of the increase. We're going to be coming back end of March for a July 1 increase, so that would be the second phase-in, if that makes sense. And if we're deferring the larger magnitude ones for an additional phase-in, that would happen the next cycle in March for the July 1 update of 2021.
That's why we hire staff. Is that, I see heads nodding. Okay?
And I think
Anything
we
else?
understand for those that have magnitude of order of magnitude increases would be more on the longer drawn out version versus those that are smaller in number and percentage would go right away.
And we're going to leave that to you.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And we'll bring back the what the lost revenue calculations would be.
Thank you
for that.
Thank you.
And so I just wanted to clarify, we aren't just talking about the percentage, but I agree it should be the large numbers that go from 2,000 to 15,000 or something of that sort. That's
large magnitude
that have to be phased in.
Thank you.
Any other clarifications?
Well, yeah, I mean,
No, I mean on the part of staff, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Did you have anything to add
Yes, I
to?
do.
Okay. Okay, so we have another addition to the current discussion about phasing in.
My magnitude concern is really for the individual as opposed to the corporate, large corporate fees. And I'd have to see the fee. I don't need to look back at the fee schedule, but the larger sort of big developers that I know have the money to withstand the fee increases, I'm less concerned about the magnitude there than I am the individual person who may be coming in to pay a fee and all of a sudden it's expanded largely. That's where my concern lies, is phasing in for the individual person.
And I think by magnitude, it wasn't an absolute dollar value, it would be a percent increase. For instance, the development fee could go from 5,000 to 15,000. You would consider that a significant increase, right, in magnitude? Okay. An appeal fee going from 250 to 875, you would consider that significant. Okay. One's an individual, the other's corporate.
And I'm more concerned about the individual
I
who
heard
has
that.
to pay that appeal fee than I am about the corporate going from 5 to 15.
And I don't think we're going to get detailed methodology here, and I'm just going to ask staff to bring it back with all of that input that we've given. Is that fair? Because that's your job. All right, do you have further questions for clarity on that?
Nope. We're gonna make
Thank
it
you,
work.
Council, for a spirited discussion. Great presentations. Thank you to our consultants for being here. We appreciate that. Thank you, public, for your comments. And with that, I'll move us to item C-2, adoption of Resolution 79-19 to approve utility rebate program for residents of mobile home parks and apartment complex within city limits, which are not individually metered residencies, and adopt resolution number 80-19, City of Morro Bay scheduled turn-on and turn-off procedure, account privacy and protection policy, and collection policy. With that, Ms. Callaway, I believe you're up again.
Absolutely. I did provide you, and there's copies in the back for members of the audience, with two red line versions of one of the scheduled turn-on, turn-off procedure and one of the collections policy with some clarification. There's two simple clarifications in each one. So if you want to reference those. To start off, in August, the council asked for a future agenda item to extend the utility discount program that currently exists to mobile home park tenants and apartment complex tenants. The issue has been that mobile homes are not individually metered by the city for each residence. Rather, the complex handles that, and the mobile home park owner is the customer of the city rather than the residents. So there was no way to qualify those residents of mobile home parks for our current utility discount program, given the guidelines of that program. We did kind of toss around a few ideas of how we could make this work. So our proposal is to offer a utility rebate program. We did meet with Ms. Winters and another resident of the mobile home park to discuss how their bills work. Modeled the rebate program very much after the discount program. Residents will have to fill out an application once a year, just as the current utility discount program members do, and that is to confirm income qualification each year. And then for the proposed rebate program, we would provide a rebate to qualifying residents of mobile home parks or apartment complex and the last check run in October and our last check run in April. And by that I mean our accounts payable check runs. We would provide a rebate of up to 6 months at that point, and basically give them a check for that rebate. The issue came down with how do we determine what's an appropriate rebate amount. Mobile home parks are not charged under the single-family residential rates. However, we don't have a lot of information at this point on what charges will be added to them for the wharf surcharge and that type of thing. So we used last year's average utility discount program, the amount of the discount, which was approximately $150 a year. We did not incorporate any of the rate increases or the wharf increases, knowing that the mobile home parks are charged a lower rate to begin with. So we, in order to have some justification of how we came up with that number, excuse me, that was our methodology. We are proposing that for this year only, a qualifying resident can come in, fill out the application, and we will rebate or discount the rebate back to July 1. So if they come in December, they won't get the rebate check until April. We can't be processing them all the time. However, in April, they will get a rebate from July 1 up until April, just to kind of expedite the process on our end, but also be fair to the qualifying residents. After July 1, just as with our utility discount customers, they will receive rebates from the date they apply forward. So if somebody doesn't apply until November of next year, they will only get a rebate from November, December, January, February, March, and the April rebate. in full disclosure, I'm not sure that there's going to be many apartment complex residents that will qualify under this. We'll continue to kind of think about what we can make work for them, but should somebody qualify, they certainly can fill out the application and we process a rebate for them. The second part of this agenda item is some additional utility policies. You've seen several of these throughout the past year. And we continue to kind of formalize these and have these available for our customers as they come in and have assurance that we're treating everybody under the same set of rules and guidelines. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for incorporating a large component of our community into the opportunity to participate as potentially what I'll call financially challenged individuals in these programs. I think that's extremely important. With that, I'm going to open it up first to public comment, seeing a limited number of people. We will open up public comment again. Welcome, Mobile Home Park Linda. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's very rewarding to be called on as far as the city is concerned because of our involvement here in the city council. I thank Jen for contacting us, and the other lady was named Judy Anderson. We've worked really, really hard to build a network of communication throughout the mobile home parks, and I have to ask of all of you if there are any of your constituents that are living in mobile home parks that have any kind of questions in regards to anything as far as the mobile home parks. Feel free to share my contact information with them, my email address, and I think all of you have it, and if you don't, I will send it all to you, and hopefully this will build a stronger unit as far as the mobile home park community is concerned. It is a lot of the low-income people that live here and are our service workers right here in Morro Bay, and we want to make sure that they can stay here for as long as possible. So I thank you very much for including us all in all of that.
Ms. Winters, I just want to say that I hope you know that it's with love that I call you Mobile Home Park Linda, because you asked me to.
Yes, I did, because
maybe
I
our viewers
you.
don't know and wonder, what is that mayor doing calling her Mobile Home Park Linda? But that's a term of affection, and I want to say that. But I wanted to say something about you. You're a model advocate for community involvement, and you are poised, and your delivery is succinct, and we appreciate the time and commitment that you've given to the advocacy efforts that you've been involved in. And I just wanted to recognize you for all that you do and your consistent presence here and the way you present yourself.
Thank you. That's so nice. I'm getting all verklempt here. Okay, I'm going to go sit down now. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. I'll entertain a motion.
What?
I'm going to entertain a motion first, and I'll have discussion.
Okay.
Don't worry.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we'll have discussion.
I'll let you talk.
But I would like to approve resolution number 79-19, City of Morro Bay's utility rebate program for residents of mobile home parks and apartment complexes within city limits, which are not individually metered, and also approve resolution number 80-19, City of Morro Bay's scheduled turn-on and turn-off procedures, account privacy and protection policy, and collections policy.
Is there a second?
I'll second that for discussion.
We do have a motion by Councilmember Davis for the staff report, the recommendation, and a second by Councilmember McPherson. I'll open it up for discussion.
I want to say that I am so proud of our staff for making this happen. It all began with a letter from a constituent asking if it was possible, and our council agreed to ask staff to find out if it was possible. And with Jennifer Callaway, anything is possible. So thank you so much for this. My heart beats with love for you for doing this.
You can join Linda.
I couldn't have said that better. I'm so grateful, really, truly, for the speed with which she took this issue on and came up with a plan and a way to make it happen. I just wanted to pose an alternative way of running the program, and partly because I want to make sure that we treat everyone fairly. And I do know that mobile home residents pay substantially less water and sewer bills than residential customers. So my recommendation was that when they come in with with their proof that they qualify for the PG&E discount, that they simply bring their last month's bill, and their discount is based on what they actually paid in water and sewer rates.
They don't have a bill.
Yes, they do. They get a bill.
From the mobile home park.
Correct.
But, okay, I'll let you go ahead with your discussion.
No, they receive a bill that details out how much they're being charged for water and sewer for that month. And that would just be used to base it then. I agree with the 6 month. I wouldn't want to, it's just that using the average of residential customers is going to give them more than they paid. They're going to get a higher discount than residential customers. And I did check with Jen to see if this was feasible, and it is, because they do have to come in anyway with their proof and their bill, and that would just note then what their refund would be, or their discount.
And my question would be, would they have to come every month?
No. Just take one bill. But
it could be a high usage month or a low usage month, or?
Well, the usage amount is a pretty small amount on there, because I've seen the bills and I've looked at the bill, and
okay.
It's just an alternative way that to me seemed more reasonable, and to treat people in the same way. It should be based on what they actually paid, not an average of another group. So.
Good point.
Yeah, that's
good point. Comments? Any other comments? Discussion?
One comment. I can't say it as well as the rest of you have, but Linda, thank you so much for what you've done, and Jen and staff. This is just a very nice thing. Thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Addis.
I'm extremely impressed, so thank you. I did hear you say that folks that live in apartments wouldn't necessarily be able to get the benefits of this discount program, and so I'm just wondering what there is for them in the future, if anything.
So with the mobile home parks, every month they get a statement from the park owner or the managing company that has their lease, how much they own for the lease on the property, and their PG&E and what they're getting charged for water. And that's what we can use to verify their income and that they still live in that address. Some apartments that have utilities included in their rent likely do not receive something like that from their landlord. I can't imagine that they do. If they do, they'll qualify, and we can run them through this program to figure out another way. We have to think of some other way to encompass them, and we'll continue to do that. The challenge is having some proof of residency, some proof of income qualification, and then some methodology for how we're calculating it. And maybe it's the same methodology as is in here, or the alternative methodology. We just want to make sure we're not doing a gift of public funds. So there has to be something to tie it back to.
But we're still so that is still in the ethers. It's not a done deal necessarily for apartment.
Correct. If we can come up with something, and I'm not sure of the world out there that's impacted by this either. How many apartment complexes include utilities and rent that would, potentially be income qualified?
Okay. And then I also want to thank Linda for coming back and helping educate us, and I appreciate your advocacy.
Marlis, thank you for that recommendation change. And I just want to say I know there's been extensive discussion with with Linda, and she feels that the flat rate is very fair and would be very much appreciated. I'm concerned about the administrative burden for staff of having a flat rate versus having to go through looking at bills to administer this. That's my only concern. So I guess I support the motion and the second that exists.
And I do too. I support the methodology that Jennifer proposed in the staff report. It just seems simple and it's not a huge amount of money, but it's meaningful, I think.
Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember McPherson.
Yes.
Councilmember Addis.
Yes.
Councilmember Heller.
Yes.
And Mayor Heading.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. That concludes our business for the evening, except for item D. Notice I said except for item D. Council declaration of future agenda items. Looking to my right first. Any futures? No?
Nope.
Looking to my left. Councilmember Davis?
Yeah, Cindy Batant brought forth an issue tonight about making donations to the utility discount program. And I wonder if that requires an agenda discussion, or if we could just ask staff if they could come up with something and bring back a recommendation.
Probably should agendize that, because that would be a policy decision that we would have to make. May involve a program approval, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that's similar to, I think we've had discussion, maybe we haven't, maybe it's individual discussion, sorry, about community foundation considerations and the ability to donate.
You're talking about a larger mechanism for donation than the one that already exists on the water bill.
For
the I thought on the water bill you could already donate, and
you can. It was a different mechanism for people of.
She wanted the even. I would support that.
Council, yeah, and I would support that as well. I think that there are possibilities there. Is that good? Okay. Thank you.
Although I think we should ask staff if they have the time to do that, and do they need to take an action item off their current work plan in order to do this?
So
I don't know how much time this would take.
So we are reviewing that policy right now,
Right, but I'm
and that
just asking
recommendation.
him
Okay.
if this particular request would.
It may not get agendized for some time, but because there's a large list of items ahead of it. But yeah, that's a good question, and I'll staff if you want to respond.
So I would say, to the extent that there's community members actively working on this, they can do that, continue to do that until this is agendized. Given the amount of fund balance in there, I doubt you see this before the calendar year, until we get through audit and start working into next year. But I'm not sure that it needs to be on agenda before then either. That community group can keep working and doing their efforts on their behalf, and then we'll bring it back for the city council conversation on policy and staff involvement.
Good. Okay. Anything else? No. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. The next regular meeting of the Morro Bay City Council will be held on Tuesday, October 8th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. at the Veterans Memorial Hall located at 209 Surf Street, Morro Bay, California. Thank you and good evening.